Okay, the board meeting will begin in just about 4 minutes. Okay, we'll begin in 1 minute. Okay, the February 6th State Board meeting will now come to order. Good morning and welcome to the February 6th, 2026 State Board of Education meeting. Board members, please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are finished speaking. Please note that board members may be using their cell phones and laptop computers to access the agenda and information related to this meeting. Live streaming is available through the State Board of Education's website. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Kristen Christensen. Maggie Douglas.
Here.
Lisa Schoenhoff.
Here.
Liz Renner.
Here.
Kirk Penner.
Present.
Sherry Jones.
Here.
Elizabeth Tegmeyer.
Here.
Deborah Neary.
Here.
Commissioner Maher.
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Quorum is established. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. The Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education's website. Agenda item 2.1. Dr. Paul Turman, Chancellor of the Nebraska State College System, please join us at the front of the room for a special presentation.
President Tegmeyer, if you don't mind, I'll jump in here and talk a little bit about why I think this information is important to you as a board and why we invited Dr. Turman and his staff to be with us here today. There is a great deal of synergy that we have with the state college system. One point I would like to make is that I actually am in your seat when it comes to the state college system. I'm actually a member of the Board of Trustees for the state college system, so I see their work directly. The second thing that I would say is what you're going to see today is directly implicated with what we're doing to increase the teacher pipeline. I think Dr. Turman will share with us the many reasons for those connections and how this is important to us as a department and how it's important to all of us as a state. So, Chancellor Turman, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you a little bit this morning to kick off your meeting. As Dr. Maher noted, I think each one of our institutions. Whoops. Is it going now? Okay. Sorry about that. Each one of our institutions started as normal schools here in the state of Nebraska. And as a result of that, I think we're extremely proud of the fact that we continue to prepare teachers for not only the rural parts of the state or the entire state of Nebraska. So in front of you is a packet where I'll walk through, and those for the audience to be able to see some of the content that I have. But I think the first thing very much, and one of the things that I'm very proud of, is the fact that when you look at our overall enrollment within the state college system, right now, when you compare the spectrum of different degree programs that we've expanded into after starting out as normal schools and then becoming teachers' colleges, that we still see a very significant priority in the fact that about 1,600 students, undergraduate students in our system right now, are in some way working toward the completion of a degree to then transition into a district here in Nebraska. That ends up being it's the equivalent of about 1 in 3 of our students that are pursuing that particular pathway. So 29% or almost 30% of those students, in addition to the fact that we have business administration, other wide range of programs. I think as we look at the data that comes from the Department of Ed and the teacher shortage and the areas where we have significant backlog for us to be able to fill those gaps, we are trying to think more aggressively in taking the innovations that this board has implemented and try to make sure that we're continuing to evolve as a state college system. I'll note one of the things in slide number, or page number 5 that's in your booklet emphasizes that this would, I think, represent what back in the early turn of the century, when Purdue State College became the first public institution in the state of Nebraska, 2 years before we became a state, 4 years before the University of Nebraska at Lincoln became the land-grant institution. We were serving kind of local area communities that had students that had a desire to go into teacher education, and that then transitioned into both Wayne and then Chadron, and at one point, the University of Nebraska Kearney was in our system as well, all starting as normal schools. And I think this very brief kind of infographic represents what that traditional pathway would have looked like back then. Students come right out of a local high school, They then transition into one of our institutions. We navigate them through, do student teaching, and then push them back out into the districts. I think one of the things that we've clearly recognized is that's not a model that's going to be sustainable into the future, and we need to be thinking about a wide range of pathways. When we go to the next page, page 6 and 7, I would like to say that this is a representation of the wide spectrum of the way in which our teacher education programs, our education prep programs have expanded over the last 4 to 5 years. Much of that from the fact that the department has moved forward in creating far greater flexibility in Rule 20, Rule 21, and Rule 24. We put together a task force roughly about 36 months ago that brought core representatives from each one of our campuses, 3 representatives, our deans, our teacher ed faculty, our chairs, and we began to have much broader conversation about how we can continue to evolve. I was grateful that Brad Dirksen from your team, who was integral in bringing these rule changes, participated in those conversations. Every time we bring up an idea, we bounce those things against him. And so when you look at this kind of roadmap, I think it's a reflection of what we see in higher education of needing various alternative pathways for students to be able to explore. So yes, the traditional pathway is still there. You're a high school senior, you have an interest in pursuing teacher education, well, you can still follow that same one that's been around for more than a century now. We also have expanded into doing what we call Roots to Teaching, and so a dual credit pathway for students across each one of our institutions. And if we have time, I'll kind of break down some of the more details related to that. But I think what we're seeing is that more students, given the opportunity to take 3 to 4 courses in their teacher education prep program while they're still in high school, working with teachers in their local school who support, who mentor them, is increasing the pipeline that we're seeing so that students are starting that long before that traditional model comes to play. The department has always also expanded and had the opportunity to do what they call apprenticeship programs. And so moving a paraprofessional teacher into the pipeline. So our homegrown Nebraska Educator program gives the opportunity for someone to they stay where they're at, have coursework or their experiences as a paraprofessional now count toward our teacher education program requirements, and do that while they're living and working in their respective district, so that at the end of that program that they're fully licensed in the state. And we've seen partnerships with a good number of districts around the state across all 3 of our institutions. One of the ones, and I think you gave me the opportunity to have one of my staff members come and talk to you about Nebraska Smart about a year ago. That's our online tutoring program. It started out specifically for rural districts, and this year, and I have Judy Yorgis on my team who serves as the interim director of that program. We expanded to all of Nebraska. And so every district in the state, Lincoln, Omaha, Grand Island, not just rural, not just the schools that are part of NERCSA have the opportunity to participate in that program. But why it fits on this, not only because they're providing instruction to K-12 students currently, but it's our teacher education candidates who are doing that work. And so we saw this as a twofold opportunity to provide a pathway to help students that are in K-12, but also give our K-12 candidates the opportunity to have that engagement point much, much earlier in their academic experience. And we're very pleased that every student who's now come through and been a tutor in our Nebraska Smart program is living and teaching in the state of Nebraska as well. So that is very much meeting the mark. One of the things that's the newest, and Dr. Maher, I think this is where kind of our conversation point and opportunity to come and visit here with the board. So the Higher Learning Commission, just about 2 years ago, along with the many other accreditors around the country, are expanding what they call these innovation strategies. And right now, or previously, every degree program to earn a bachelor's degree would require you to have 120 credit hours. They've given the opportunity for pilot programs to lower that to as much as 90 credit hours. And so with the changes that you all made with Rule 21 and 20, it created a mechanism where our faculty could go back and basically start from scratch and look at the learning outcomes and the requirements that you have and really rebuild those programs so that our board at our January meeting, approved 2 different programs for Chadron State College to do a special education degree in 96 credit hours and still meet your exact licensure requirements, as well as a 95 credit hour program for elementary education, and doing that exact same thing. We've now, after my board approved those, we've sent those to the Higher Learning Commission, and within the next few months, we expect that they'll come and do a site visit at Chadron. But also note that Peru and Wayne both have those 2 same programs ready to go for our April meeting. Just took them a little bit longer to get that through the pipeline. We see this as an opportunity to go back to that homegrown Nebraska educators model. So adult learners who have an intent and an interest of being a certified teacher in the state of Nebraska have the capacity to do it in a much shorter time frame and not have to build all the additional elective credits that are not necessarily required for them to do their work. And I think that very much aligns with the work that the department is doing around registered apprenticeships programs as well. The last one that I'll emphasize is it's our Master of Arts in Teaching. This is also a relatively newer program that stemmed from our teacher ed faculty going out and talking with rural districts. So previously, and even before, under your old requirements, a student who, let's say, the best example I oftentimes use is an accounting degree. I have an accounting degree. I've worked in that field for 20 years. And I've realized that my time between tax season is not enjoyable anymore, and I want to maybe go back and be an educator. Previously, you could get an alternative license from the department, but then if you had no teacher ed coursework or credentials, you would have to go back and complete about 60 to 64 credit hours of coursework in undergraduate courses to be certified to teach in the state of Nebraska. The opportunity for us to use competency-based as well as prior learning assessment now, we developed a Master of Arts in Teaching, which is essentially taking 12 graduate credits or 4 courses, aligning them to your standards, and an individual can be certified or temporary certification to teach while they're completing those credit hours, and then they finish off an additional 6 credit hours of student teaching clinical experience, and they do that in the course of a 2-year period. Once they're done, they have a graduate certificate that gives them licensure to teach in the state of Nebraska. We're also built that program in a way that on top of it, you have the capacity of taking 18 additional credit hours in core content areas, say mathematics, English language arts, or you pick the discipline, which makes you certified to be able to teach dual credit courses for your district as well. So you couple those together, and then you have a fully approved master's degree as a Master of Arts in Teaching, which moves you up the teacher scale at many of the districts that you have. And so those various programs, as you look at page 7, maybe have you jump to the next one, it's that spectrum of things is really being driven by the work that this board has done by listening to, I think, the people that you put on those committees to do those rule changes, to bring them forward to you, to give us more flexibility. And I even think the pilot program initiative that you have embedded in Rule 21, I believe, has allowed our folks to think even more broadly about ways that we could think very differently about these programs. I'm going to jump a little bit ahead, and as you see on page 8 and 9, and even on page 10, gives you a little bit more background on those first 3 programs, the reduced credit bachelor's degree programs, the dual credit pathways, as well as our apprenticeship models. But I did want to just kind of reinforce, I know that our numbers, I think we had about 700 sessions that had been completed in Nebraska Smart when we came and visited with you about a year ago. That now, I think because we've gone statewide, has grown to 2,300 sessions that we've completed, and those numbers increase exponentially each month as we now have Omaha and Lincoln and many of these other districts involved. And the expansion you can see on how we went from just 3 ESUs to all of NERCSA, now to even smaller district being incorporated to everybody, has really seen that growth. And math and English language arts continue to be that area of emphasis that our students really have a significant need to be able to achieve. And if you have questions specifically about Nebraska Smart, Judy is here to be able to answer those. I'm going to end on page 13. Page 13 is also a newer initiative, and I like how the synergy happens with, we implement one new pathway to address a problem in a shortage area in Nebraska. A topic comes up, and we get invited to the table, and we're able to successfully work with various partners. And so you might remember that this summer, Senator Kauth had an interim study hearing, and the intent was to give districts the opportunity to be basically classified as an EPP, an education partner or education preparation partner in the state. Brad Dirksen was at those meetings. I think he was really cautioning on your behalf. That's probably not the best strategy. You have 16 now. To expand it to almost 250 becomes something that would be just almost overwhelming for the department to manage. And so because Dr. Maher knew of the work we were doing, he encouraged Senator Kauth to visit with me. I gave her much of a very similar presentation. And she invited me to the next meeting that they had, and we began to work with Millard Public School on a program that they had tried to lay out there, where they take their mentoring and training program and use that as a way to certify for alternative certification. And so through conversations with Dr. Schwartz and his team, we were able to put together a couple of different options depending on how big the district is. Option one, where they do the training. We come in, we assess it, we evaluate it, and we certify it that it meets the requirements that we have for the MAT. Or we could have them deliver our coursework through a professional development model, or just having districts do the MAT initiative, which either one of those, it's about a $2,500 cost for a person to go through the option one. It's about $3,500 for option two, and it's about $7,000 fully if the district wanted to do specifically just working with us to do an MAT. Our goal was find alternative pathways that allow ESUs to partner together, districts to partner together, or for us to deliver that curriculum to them. And so our goal and hope is that as a result of all this work and the flexibility you've given us to be innovative, starts to help us chip away, and we get more people in that pipeline in that first slide that I provided. And Dr. Meyer asked if I'd try to do that in 15 minutes and open up to questions, and I'm right on time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about some of the work that we've been doing in the state college system in the last few years.
Well, Dr. Turman, thank you for coming. It's been great to see the partnership between what we're trying to do on this board and what you do in the college system. I think we all agree that we want to bring more people into the profession, but keep that quality as high as possible. So thank you for innovating with us.
Yeah.
And now, any board members, questions or comments? Yeah, Liz.
Thank you for coming today, Dr. Turman. And one thing I want to tell you I appreciate is seeing how our rules translate into the real world and hearing about how people like yourself make them into meaningful actions in the real world. So that is great to hear. My question is about is there anything, a mechanism in place to survey or review experiences so we can see how well these new pathways are actually preparing people to be in classrooms?
Yes, there is. And I think we have a couple of different mechanisms. Probably the easiest one is the fact that we have the Nebraska statewide education reporting system, NSERS. And I believe the licensure data is now going to be integrated into that system. So it gives us a very strong opportunity to be able to continue to track the individuals that we produce, the candidates that we get licensed and certified. Are they staying in the state of Nebraska? Are they continuing in the districts that they started at? I think the end goal of many of these programs is that give them an opportunity to start in a place that maybe they're place-bound to, so that the goal is that they're going to stay there and serve the rural districts into the future. But we plan to continue to utilize that platform, as well as our teacher ed programs as they move forward with not only the licensure being certified by the state the Department of Education, but also by CAPE, requires that we're continuing to go out and evaluate those, the impact of these various programs. I would say that we've not had to leverage the new pilot program initiative that you have embedded in the rules, but that also has a come back to you and report, give you the flexibility to do something even more different than what we've presented here. But we have an expectation as a board that you're going to come back and document what that impact is. And I think that's a great evaluation strategy to let people run for a little while and see if they can think really much outside of the box, which is what I think our faculty have been willing to do with the new innovation that you brought forward for us as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for getting this done. A lot of work on the Rules and Regulations Committee. Brad Dirkson's been awesome. Elizabeth's been leading a lot of this for the last couple of years. I mean, when I first got on here, it was like pounding your head on the table. I mean, why are we doing this? Why is it this many hours? Nobody had answers. And it took a while to unwind that. And so I thank you for that. And I thank Brad and Elizabeth for her leadership on that rules and regs. And the other individuals on that committee, we made huge strides.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yep.
Right.
All right.
Before you take off, anyone, I do want to just say, if anyone has questions about the smart tutoring, now would be the time before they take off. No? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
We are moving on to agenda item 2.2, which is always a fun item for us every February, CTE month recognition. Staff members Katie Graham and Sydney Kobza, please make your way to the front of the room for a brief introduction regarding the special presentations. Well, actually bring your special guests. And thank you on behalf of the full board for the sweet treat. We will never turn down Baker's chocolates. While you're just shuffling, the Baker's chocolates, he's partnered with our CTE programs, hasn't he?
Yes, they are former Skills USA members. I think before it was called Skills USA.
Ms. Vicka,
That's
I
right.
know a bit about that.
That's right, former VICA member.
That's right.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Graham. I have the honor of serving as the administrator for the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, and we are excited to have this opportunity to recognize and celebrate career and technical education. Each February, we recognize CTE Month by elevating student voice. Career and Technical Student Organizations, or CTSOs, are an integral classroom-connected component of Nebraska CTE programs. CTSOs extend learning beyond the classroom by reinforcing academic, technical, and employability skills through applied intracurricular experiences embedded within CTE coursework. Participation in CTSOs supports leadership development, teamwork, career exploration, and real-world application of technical knowledge, helping students connect instruction to career pathways and workforce expectations. We have 7 different CTSOs in Nebraska, as you can see on the screen, and over 25,000 Nebraska students participated in them last year. Through CTSOs, students have opportunities to take on leadership roles at the local and state level, including serving as state officers within their respective organizations. These state-level leadership experiences prepare and position students to seek national office, where they are selected through a competitive process to represent their peers and lead at the highest levels of CTSOs. Nebraska currently has 4 national CTSO officers. To put that in perspective, many states may have 1 national officer in a given year, some years none at all. Having 4 at the same time is truly extraordinary, particularly for a state of our size. These students are not only representing Nebraska, they are helping shape national conversations about leadership development, workforce readiness, education, and industry engagement. These roles are not honorary, as you all can probably attest. Serving as a national CTSO officer requires going through a highly competitive, multi-stage selection process, often after serving as a state officer, completing rigorous CTE coursework, and demonstrating sustained leadership. They represent their organizations and their state at conferences with industry leaders, with policymakers and educators across the country, and in some cases internationally. Today's presentation is not a report to the board. It is an opportunity for you to hear directly from students who are operating at the national level, working with employers, policymakers, and educators across the country, and to engage with them as leaders. This work directly aligns with the new strategic plan's priority number 3, equipping learners for the workforce. Today's presentation is intentionally designed as one story told through 4 perspectives. You'll hear from these incredible students representing Educators Rising, FBLA, and FFA. 3 here in person, as you can see, and 1 joining us from abroad, each offering a different vantage point on national leadership, preparation, and what they are seeing across the country. Just as a little introduction, Educators Rising focuses on developing future educators through early teaching experiences, leadership development, and pathways into the education profession, which is a perfect segue from Dr. Turman's presentation just a moment ago. FBLA, or Future Business Leaders of America, prepares students for careers in business, finance, and entrepreneurship through applied learning and leadership at the state and national levels. And FFA develops premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education, serving students across rural, suburban, and urban communities nationwide. Together, their experiences tell a single powerful story about what happens when opportunity, classroom instruction, and leadership align. So to begin, we're going to hear from one of Nebraska's national CTSO officers who is currently representing her organization and our state internationally. Claire Whipple is serving this year as a national FFA officer and sent us a message today from Japan, where she is engaged in international agricultural and leadership work as part of her national role. Her experiences reflect both the scope and the responsibility and the global reach of national CTSO leadership. We asked Claire what her experiences as a national officer will include this year and why CTSOs are valuable for students.
Yes, I'm Claire Whipple, currently serving as the National FFA Central Region Vice President. I'm originally from Chambers, Nebraska, and currently am a sophomore at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, majoring in agriculture education with a minor in the Angler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program. I'm very sorry that I can't be there with you all today, but I am still thankful to get to join you virtually and tell you a little bit about myself and my role and experiences as a National FFA officer so far. Before I begin, I'd love to say a quick thank you. Thank you for your dedication for students across Nebraska. I definitely would not be the person that I am today if it wasn't for this blue jacket that I'm wearing. Career technical student organizations are crucial for high school students' experiences and their success in their careers beyond high school. CTSOs give students a purpose and opportunities and experiences to really fulfill that purpose. So on behalf of the National FFA organization, the Nebraska FFA Association, and myself, thank you for your dedication to students across Nebraska. One of the really unique pieces of serving as a National FFA officer is the international experience that my teammates and I get to have each year. So I'm currently in Japan. The National FFA organization has a relationship with the Future Farmers of Japan student organization. And so one of my favorite memories here in Japan was when we visited a student farm, the Jundai Farm. And this farm is operated by Tokyo Metropolitan Student High School. So we visited and we got an introduction of what Future Farmers of Japan is. We got to meet some students, and then we got to be a part of the mochi making process. I met some students and made really awesome connections with them. My teammates did the same. And then later we got to go outside and visit the rest of their farm. They had wasabi growing with fresh spring water from the mountains, trout growing, and that they'll harvest later on. And then we also got to visit their rice fields as well, that they grow the mochi rice from. And each of the students wrote out their description and said it to us in English. And you could just tell that they had worked so hard to provide that information for us and make sure that we felt welcome and loved, and we did the same right back to them and expressed our thanks over and over and over. When we left on the bus, something that each place that we visited has done was wave us goodbye on the bus as we left. But this particular place, I shed a few tears because I just kept thinking about, even though those students and I, we didn't speak the same language. We probably didn't believe the same things. We didn't have the same backgrounds, but we still had a passion for agriculture and just human connection all the way around. Moments like this are what I will experience as a national officer over and over and over again this year. I'm home stationed in Indianapolis, where I'll live in an apartment with my teammates, but for the majority of the year, I'll get to travel the country, state by state by state, and have moments like this with FFA members and agriculture education students everywhere. Something that's coming up very soon is FFA Week, which is the last week in February. I'll be stationed in Utah, where I'll visit, I think, 2 schools each day, giving a keynote address and doing workshops with students and just making some really awesome connections with them. I get to travel to 8 different FFA state leadership conferences and conventions, one of them being home in Nebraska, so I'll be home very shortly, and I'm very excited for that. Another role and responsibility that my teammates and I have is being the student voice on the Board of Education, which is why we travel all across the country. So our connections and our conversations with students are really just to understand how FFA is treating them and what they're giving to the organization and what it's returning back to them. And we take that information and those student stories to the Board of Directors so that they know how the organization is impacting real students' lives, and making sure that we're taking it in the direction that it needs to go, keeping the things we need to keep and changing the things that we need to change. So my teammates and I have an incredible year ahead of us, a challenging year, but such a fulfilling year. I'm very blessed to get to wear this blue jacket just one more year, and get to call it home and get to call the people in it my family.
All right. Next, we are going to hear from James Fletcher, who is celebrating his birthday today, a national officer representing FBLA, who will bring this to a more practical level by sharing how Nebraska CTE translates directly into professional skills needed to lead and operate effectively at the national level. And if this
Board members
goes to the next slide, let's
Great.
see. There we go. So we asked James to reflect on these skills and how he's using them daily in his role.
Hello, my name is James Fletcher. I'm from Litchfield, Nebraska, about a 3-hour drive from here. And I started in CTE courses in my school in 7th grade when I started in Career 7 and Ag 7. And that's where I really started my CTE journey. I was able to take classes in agriculture, business, and really learn more about the different worlds of those. But that's kind of where my passion started for FBLA and FFA I'm a part of as well. And that is where I've started most of my skills. And I think 3 skills that I've taken towards the national level is teamwork and collaboration, professional communication, and time management and accountability. So I'll start kind of with the professional communication. When you're a national officer, you're connecting with, whether it's our national staff members, connecting with state advisors from other states or state officers. So that was something I really had to take with me and learn. And I think it's something I've learned through my different classrooms in the classroom, whether that's through my intro to business class or intro to financial literacy. And being able to really learn how to use those communication tools properly was really important for me. And I think the Nebraska CTE program really helped set that up for me to be successful on the state and national level. Because when you have that communication, you have to be very professional when you're talking to anybody outside, as you're the highest representative in FBLA at that moment. Another one is time management and accountability. I can say before joining FBLA or before joining CTE, I can say I did not have the best time management skills. I maybe took on too many things and didn't give out my time evenly to everywhere. So I think through CTE and being able to be a part of those programs and just being an FBLA and taking leadership positions at the local level, state level, and national level, I've been able to kind of progress and really work on my skills through time management as well, and learn how to take maybe prioritize things or pick one thing that I'm working on, because through those classes as well, I've been able to build on those as well. And then accountability. When you start out as a young age, whether you're leading class projects or you're even getting sent to state leadership conference from being a part of your business courses or ag courses, you have to take accountability for your competitive events, for your projects in class. And that I think is something that has been set me up for success as well, because you get thrown into hard rigor right away, or I was thrown into hard rigor right away at 7th grade. And I think that really prepared me and helped me build a professional image of myself, but also helped me take accountability of my actions. And then I think just building on that was really, those, just like the state leadership conferences, you're able to attend and really to put yourself in a team, put yourself in an individual event, and its responsibility is on you. So you have to take that accountability and push it to success to wherever you want to be within your organization. And then finally, the teamwork and collaboration part of it, kind of going into that, you're always working with other people, whatever stage you are at in life, whether you're here on the Board of Education or I'm at a high school project in my local school, I'm always working on a team and having to collaborate with other people. And I think through these different organizations as well, I've been able to build that, whether I was working on class projects or even, like I said, the competitive events earlier. And I think those are some other skills that have really helped me as a national officer and that I'm using daily, because it's not just meeting with people from Nebraska anymore. I'm meeting people from Florida, California, New York. And I think you have to have those connections and being able to be personable but also be professional. And then tying that all together is kind of, those things have set me up for success in a national officer role, especially through the course rigor of Nebraska CTE. I'm lucky enough to have two different CTE programs at my school. And I think that has been an amazing journey for me to be in part of both of those and being able to just participate and really delve myself into both of those fully.
Thank you. Great job. All right. Next, we're going to take a step back and look at where leadership development begins. Our next national officer, Owen Elsasser, represents Educators Rising and will share how early leadership experiences in Nebraska helped prepare him for the level of responsibility that you've been hearing about described.
All right. First of all, thank you guys for having us here today. I'm Owen. I'm originally from Omaha, graduated from Ralston, but right now I'm a freshman at Wayne State. So when I think about what leadership truly requires, vision, consistency, and accountability on my own, I can honestly say that my experience with Nebraska career and technical education pathways and classes and mentors, teachers, and specifically Educators Rising itself have prepared me perfectly for this level of leadership and representation in this role that I have now as a national officer. And my leadership experience started pretty early. I joined Educators Rising when I was a sophomore, and I became a chapter officer, which is kind of like the earliest level of leadership you can get in our organization at the high school. And being a chapter officer, it was really my first introduction to leadership as a whole, just within my high school. And I wasn't just holding a title necessarily. I got the opportunity to run meetings, facilitate discussions, organize events, speaking in front of peers and adults, going to the district board meetings and stuff like that, and overall just being a role model for people who wanted to be future educators just like me in my high school. And on that note, I feel like Nebraska Ed Rising has set the bar really high from the start in their expectations to not only just be a member of Educators Rising, but what does it really mean to want to be a future educator? Or, we're facing a lot of, the teacher shortage and, like I said, like what does it mean to be a future educator? And that's something Nebraska Ed Rising instilled in me really early, even before I had any leadership role above just being a chapter officer in my high school. And as I continued, I got a role as a Nebraska Ed Rising state officer my senior year of high school. And that was really the turning point, I would say, for my leadership experience and kind of what I needed to grow into where I am today. At the state level, leadership shifted more so from being about just enthusiasm to being more about real responsibility. I learned how to collaborate with the officer team, overcome many challenges and roadblocks throughout the year, but at the same time, find amazing success. And then work directly with educators and members and students. And last year we had our first multi-day state conference in Educators Rising, which for other CTSOs that might be the norm, but for Educators Rising, that was really cool to see that amount of growth and be on the state leadership side of that. And all of those experiences as a state officer, I would say have really prepared me for my role as a national officer. And not only prepared me, they inspired me. Being a state officer didn't leave me at the end of my term feeling like, okay, I'm done. I can go and just be a teacher now. I wanted to do more. I wanted to take the next step and be more of a leader for future educators. And so I applied to be a national officer. And fortunately, I got the role, and now I'm here to sit in front of you guys today. But another part of leadership in Ed Rising that I think goes unnoticed is mentorship. And a critical part of my growth and preparation to be a national leader didn't come 100% from being a chapter officer or a state officer. It came from the teachers and the educators I faced in the classroom as a student myself, specifically in the CTE pathways and programs that I was a part of through high school. CTE classes pushed me to really raise my standards more than just being an average student. Like I said before, it really had me questioning, what does it mean to want to be an educator when I grow up? And what does that look like for me growing up and completing high school and in college? They didn't just tell me what leadership looked like or model that for me. And that mentorship culture is something that I now carry into my role as a national officer to guide other student leaders who may want to take the next step just like me. And I feel Nebraska CTE also does something exceptionally well that I feel that more states, as I get to work with other states, should try to emulate, is that it trusts students with real responsibility. And for example, as we talked about earlier, Nebraska has 4 current national leaders in CTSOs, which is, again, an amazing feat to have in 1 year. And Nebraska CTSOs don't just operate as extracurricular add-ons or after-school clubs or something you can do in your free time. They treated us as extensions of professional learning. And students are expected to show up prepared, speak with purpose, and act with integrity. And that professional expectation that Nebraska CTE and CTSOs have instilled in us as students early is exactly what national leadership requires as well. And additionally, Nebraska creates space for students to grow incrementally. Leadership isn't rushed. Students can move from chapter leadership to state leadership to national leadership, sort of how my path has gone. And they have strong support at every single level. And that pipeline gave me the confidence and competence to step into a national leadership, knowing that already since high school, I have been held to high standards and I have been prepared the way I needed to be to find success on a national level. So in short, my Nebraska Educators Rising and CTSO experience didn't just prepare me for national leadership, it shaped how I define leadership, and it taught me that leadership is about listening before speaking, representing others faithfully, and staying grounded in purpose. Because of Nebraska CTE, I didn't step into national leadership hoping I was ready. I stepped in knowing that I had been prepared. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much. All right, to close out our student perspectives, we're going to zoom back out to the national level. Our final national officer, also representing FBLA, Annabelle Coombe, will share what she's seeing across the country and how Nebraska compares from a national vantage point. You can just pass this down that way, please. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annabelle Coombe, and I'm the national parliamentarian for FBLA. Today, I'm just going to share with you some national trends I've noticed, less like data and more just like insights as a young person. The first one that I want to start with is just overall for Generation Z, an increased interest in like business and entrepreneurship. So Gen Z very much values like independence and being able to take their own path. So we see that a lot in our classes and in our future career plans and choices. And it's also built on kind of our mindset that we should learn for passion instead of just resume building. That's something that's really big in younger students. So students like to take advantage of things like CTE and CTSOs for their own self-improvement instead of just adding positions or like listing down competitions on a resume. And we see work as more of an authentic passion instead of a chore. So through CTE and CTSOs, it's a really great opportunity for students to explore different pathways and find out what they're passionate about. So one of the things with that is getting students involved early in like niche interests. So for example, James and I were both on FBLA, which is business focused, but neither of us particularly want to go in a business field, which really shows you how much CTE can really extend into any career and how important it is for all students to learn things like economics and finance because they really go into every field. So for example, James is interested in like healthcare and becoming a doctor, and I'm interested in possibly pursuing a JD and becoming a lawyer or working in government and policy, and then also education. So there are so many different pathways we can take, and Nebraska does a really great job with that in just encouraging that kind of interdisciplinary mindset. And then another thing that Nebraska does really well is treating CTE like a college prep career pathway for all students instead of just ones going into trade school or 2-year or 4-year institutions or those pursuing higher education. We include everybody in that, which I think is very important and very inclusive for all students. And another thing I thought was important to talk about was our inevitable shift towards the use of AI. And it's something that's very controversial. So I'd like to give you kind of the 3 different perspectives that younger generations have. The first one is that some of us have an over-reliance on AI for things like writing and tasks and education. And that's kind of something that a lot of us are worried about. And then the second perspective is a lot of worry and concerns from students about like future jobs, how AI will affect the workforce. And then the last perspective we have is using AI as a tool instead of something just to do everything for you. So we have a lot of thought and a lot of opinions on AI ethics. So that's something that I think would maybe be important to teach in our education, and we do like focus on that in our CTE. And then the last thing I kind of want to mention is Nebraska has like really great rural participation and resource access for CTE, and that's very important. In a lot of states, more rural schools do not have classes like we have in like finance and education and those particular like niche interests. So that's something that we're doing very well, and I think we should continue to invest in. And I guess the last thing to mention is middle school participation is also really great in Nebraska. James, for example, started in 7th grade, so being able to go into business early or whatever interests and fields that you might want to explore, because a lot of people change their paths. So CTE just really gives any student and all students the opportunities and the skills that they need to succeed in life no matter where they go in any profession and in any field.
Thank you, Annabelle. Great job. Thank you all for representing Nebraska so eloquently. Put me to shame here. Nebraska's presence at the national level is intentional and reflects what the work happening in classrooms, programs, and partnerships across our state. I'd like to also thank our incredible state advisors who work and put on incredible opportunities for students across the state, and of course, our dedicated, hardworking CTE teachers that are in every one of our school districts. Also, thank you, board members, for supporting this system that makes all of this work possible. Happy CTE month. All right.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to grill you. No, it's not going to be that bad. I do want to open it up to board member questions and comments. Yeah, Lisa.
Just a really quick, amazing. I mean, you all are all so professional and did such a great job. I'm super impressed. Good job.
Kristen?
Thank you all for being here. Sorry. Really appreciate you all being here today and sharing your experiences. I was in DECA when I was in high school up in Norfolk. And most of the people in DECA were only in it for our powder puff football game that we did every year. But I was in it for real. And it was me and one other person that competed at state. And it was just such a fun experience getting to meet other people from across the state and learn kind of what they were interested in. And now it's really fun to see how CTE has expanded across the state even more from when I was in high school. So thank you for sharing your experiences.
Kirk?
Has the funding helped?
Funding has been instrumental, yes. So just to recap, and with many thanks to this board, we are now in our third year of categorical state funding for career and technical education and categorical support for career and technical student organizations.
Thank you.
I just had one quick thank you all for being here, and James, especially a fellow Aquarian. Love to see it. But I am so impressed and so proud that we have you and, was it Claire?
Yes.
Yes, representing us on a global and national stage. So you're really bringing a lot of pride for our state to the world. And I wondered if you had any advice for us as leaders? Your lessons that you've learned.
If you do, please grab the mic and speak into
And
it.
if you don't, that's okay too.
Well, this is a little bit hard to answer just because it seems, I can't lie, a little bit intimidating sitting in front of you guys. You were all so accomplished and we're just beginning our careers. But something, and I don't know if this really counts as advice, but something I would just encourage you guys to remember is that there are young people out here, like I'm just a freshman in college, and there are students in high school who not only are in these CTSOs and CTE pathways, but they are huge advocates for the bettering of not only like our state, but our country as well. And there's students out here who are young, but so full of passion that are ready to just get out there and make our state and our country a better place. So, you know, if you guys are ever feeling, it's real easy to get kind of down and out about the future right now, but just remember that there are people like us and others who are putting a lot of time and effort and passion into being advocates for what we are a part of, I suppose. So.
Yeah, pass it along.
I'd say the main thing I would say is just listen to students and teachers and state advisors and anyone who's involved or touches any part of CTE or CTSOs in Nebraska, because I think, especially on the national scale, that's where you're going to get your best input, not just being with national staff of your CTSO, but also listening to the teachers and the students and seeing what they're noticing. Maybe they're seeing a decline in numbers. Why? Or maybe we're seeing decline in CTE together all across the state. So I think just listening to students and teachers and anyone who touches the organizations.
And then I think the advice I would give is just to continue, like, promoting CTE is not something extra, but is something that's like an integral part of our education, because it teaches so much more than just like skills like finance and economics. Like, it taught me public speaking. I used to be very shy, and now I can speak in front of like thousands of people at our national conferences. So there are really just a lot of skills within this subset of education that are so important for everyday life. So just encouraging that for all students. I know, like, personally in some of my classes at school, like personal finance and economics, there are less women. So just really encouraging that for every single student, because it's so important.
Thank you all. That was great. I just had a few thoughts. I do think that CTSOs are so critical, and the fact is, you're all very young. I think most, not all of us, are old enough to be your parents. You just don't know where you're going to end up. And someday you're going to look back at your experiences, your leadership experiences, and you're going to say, I never imagined when I was serving as that officer that it was going to lead me down this path. And it's going to be a neat journey to look back on when you're our age. Another thing that Katie brought out was the importance, and actually Owen said it first, about mentorship. And there's various levels of that. And then Katie brought out the mentorship of your advisors. And I promise you, I was a now it's Skills USA, but it was VICA officer, and you will never forget your advisors because they are having a phenomenal impact on your life. And I am just going to, humor me, board members, I'm going to give a shout out to my former advisor, Tony Glenn, who not only served at the local level while I was a student, but then came here to NDE to serve as a state advisor. So you will carry those people and their imprint your entire life. And then my last thing is I appreciated the comment about the shift into AI and its impact on the workforce and AI ethics. And board members will be happy to know I've already, earlier this week, contacted the commissioner and said, this board really needs to have some serious conversations about AI and its role in education in Nebraska. So we are going to be looking at that in the upcoming months. But thank you for recognizing that also. I think that's very insightful. And you guys are on the cusp of technology, probably even more so than we are. So thank you for that. Any further comments before we close up? All right. Thanks so much. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to come here. I'm going to just go ahead and keep talking while they're getting settled. The next item of business is the Commissioner's report. So Commissioner Maher, please provide your report.
Well, it looks like I know how to clear a room. Thank you to Chancellor Turman, and thank you to Dr. Graham and the others who are with us here this morning in the great kickoff for this meeting. First of all, there are no items that have been identified to be removed from the consent agenda. If board members wish to remove items from the consent agenda, please fill out the form at this time. Any items that would potentially be removed from the consent agenda will be taken up under additional business. On to my comments. The first thing I feel compelled to say now is that all of these comments were generated by me. None of these came through AI or ChatGPT. So, good morning, board members and those who are still in attendance in the audience and everyone tuning in online. It's been a busy start to the month for the Department of Education, and I'm excited to share a few key updates from this past month and what lies ahead. While I enjoy most aspects of being the commissioner, one that is especially fun is an opportunity to engage with students, like you just saw. Earlier this week, as mentioned by Dr. Graham and her staff, the NDE kicked off February with our career and technical student organizations and their state officer teams. So imagine the 4 folks that you just had an opportunity to listen to and having a room of 50 of those students to interact with, or about 50, I don't know what the exact number was. We hosted them for lunch and supported them on their legislative day as they were in Lincoln on Tuesday. Like always, I'm impressed with the caliber of students who represent the state of Nebraska. Truly, if those 4 times 12-ish are any indication of what the future holds for our state, we're truly in great hands. I'm excited to have the opportunity to be with them, and as you just heard from several of them, as we consider the proclamation on CTE month. So I did that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I had another opportunity to interact with students, and one of the gripes I have in my job is not being able to interact with students enough, because students are the reason I chose the profession and are the reason that I still do what I do today. But I'm just not around them enough. So Tuesday, I'm with this group of accomplished juniors, seniors, and some freshmen and sophomores in college. On Wednesday, I had an opportunity to go to Milford. I was invited to Milford to speak to a couple of classes on my journey and what leadership meant to me. And it was to 8th graders. And to see the difference between juniors and seniors in high school and 8th graders was an interesting refresher for me that everything we do is about iteration and development of students. And I smiled as I left saying, well, they're not nearly like the students I just met with yesterday. But then I thought, but what will they be like in just a few years with the quality education? Truly, it was a joy to speak in Mrs. Mowinkle's class at Milford Junior High School. I had an absolute blast with those students. And then our week also included our hearing before the Appropriations Committee. So CTSO students, 8th graders, testifying in front of the Appropriations Committee. Sometimes when people ask me, what do you do? I just kind of say, well, here's what I've done this week, and this is not atypical. The opportunity to speak to appropriations was to detail our budget requests. And I'll summarize for you the 4 main issues that I discussed with appropriations earlier this week. Topic number 1 was the proposed sweeping of the Williams Trust Fund. This fund provides supplemental services to students at NCEC BVI, our Nebraska City location, that works with our blind and visually impaired students, not only in Nebraska City, but truly a resource that benefits our entire state. And the Williams Trust Fund was an endowment that was left as part of a gift from an estate. And so we were there to talk about how that money is used and how we would hope that the money there wouldn't get swept. We also talked about the NDE's state-funded insurance costs. While most of NDE staff is federally funded, we have about 1/3 of our employees that are subject to unanticipated increases in the health insurance, as happened this last year. It happened so late that it wasn't included in our deficit budget and wasn't included in the state's funding for NDE last year. So we were there asking in our deficit budget if that could indeed be funded for the coming year. The third point that we talked to appropriations about was early childhood endowment. Each year, the gubernatorial appointed Early Childhood Endowment Board of Trustees reviews and approves grants that combine state and private funding. And then from using the proceeds of that funding, they award gifts, give awards to various entities from around the state. The difficulty that group ran into this year wasn't in having enough money. We didn't ask for more money, but we have a statutorily prescribed limit on being able to spend, and the Board of Trustees has asked us to advocate on their behalf for an increased spending this year, but spending only from the proceeds, not to get into the guts of that endowment. So that was a request that we made. And then the fourth item was a proposed cash fund sweep in the teacher certification fund. Like last year, the NDE is slated to have about $1 million in this cash fund. We have recently, and I would say within the last 12 to 24 months, reduced fees in that on certificated folks across the state. And we want to make sure that we only have enough money in that fund to pay for items within the certification department, employees, staffing, et cetera. But also, if we do get to the point where we get an excess amount of money in that fund, we want to continually reduce the burdens on the certificate holders, on teachers, administrators, and other certificate holders in the state of Nebraska. So we ask that fund go unswept. We'll keep you updated as the legislature progresses to a more formal budget, and especially when they put out the budget bill on day 40, not too far down the road here. Next, the School Financing Review Commission will meet next week. There has been a lot of energy in the legislature around school finance, and we're excited for the year ahead to continue the work of the School Financing Review Commission as we begin to get our legs under us. I give that to you really as information. I don't know that there will ever be any action that you need to take as a board on that particular item, but it is taking a considerable amount of time from myself, from Dr. Ford, from Bryce Wilson, and from others in the department. And finally, it is my duty, because it is certainly not my pleasure, to report to you that on April 17th, Deputy Commissioner Deb Friesen will retire from the Nebraska Department of Education. Dr. Friesen has, and there will be another time to thank Dr. Friesen, or more fun, to roast Dr. Friesen. That will wait. But Dr. Friesen has been with the department for 11 years. I think that's right. For 11 years, and has served both as deputy commissioner and, really important to me, and should be to everybody, I think, she also served as commissioner for part of her time with us. This on top of a full career of teaching and administrating prior to ever coming to the office. So we will miss Dr. Friesen, and I look forward to the roast. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Maher. Do realize that someday we'll have a roast of you. Not that I'm kicking you out the door yet.
It seems from time to time we're already having that roast.
We have a good time up here. I have had requests.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Can you roast him? Yes.
Yes, our comment
Yes,
on what he just
please
said?
do, yes.
Okay, I didn't want to, okay. I just want to say that, well, yes, I do look forward to that roast. But we are sad too. We're going to miss Dr. Friesen. But in regard to your comments, Dr. Maher, I just want to say that I really appreciated the presentation that you gave at the Nebraska State School Board Association, and that it really, our school funding is so complex, and our property tax issues are so complex, and the kind of work you're doing and leading is the deep dive that has been needed for a long time, and we keep seeing short-term solutions that don't have all the research and all the input in, and for the first time we really are able to have a process in place that is taking into account the big picture and the long term, and so I really appreciate your leadership on that. Thank you.
Okay, so now I've had a request that we take a short break. So the board will reconvene at 10:20. That gives you 12 minutes. Okay, all right. So there is no president's report today per typical order of business. We will now move to the public comment period. This period may be available to any person who wishes to address the board on any matter that is on the agenda or within the board's authority to act. Up to 90 minutes will be allowed for the public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may take action to extend the total amount of time allowed for the public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may also take action to allow or terminate public comment at any time during the meeting. If you are not signed in and wish to speak, please sign in at this time. Those wishing to speak must be signed in at the table outside of the meeting room. Each individual speaking to the board will be required to complete a sign-in card for identification of oneself. Individuals are required to include on the sign-in card their name, address, name of any organization represented, and agenda item or topic that is within the board's authority to act. Individuals may be prohibited to speak in public comment if the sign-in card does not include the required information. Persons speaking to the board during public comment should state their name, city, and state at the beginning of their allotted time, and may submit printed materials for the board, but may not use any other form of media. Anyone refusing to be identified will be prohibited from speaking. Each person may address the board for up to 5 minutes. A majority of members present and voting may take action to reduce or extend the amount of individual time allotted to all speakers. If at any time persons appearing before the board exceed the time limitations set forth in this policy or on the agenda, or become abusive or threatening in language or behavior, it shall be the responsibility of the president to refuse permission to continue to address the board. We have 5 public comment cards submitted. Vice President Renner will announce the names of the speakers.
Good morning. I'll invite our first public comment to the panel, and that would be Lowen Eby, and then Rachel Pinkerton will be up next, so if you want to be ready to come when she's finished.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lowen Eby, and I reside in the Papillion La Vista School District. I was going to read verbatim my comments that I made regarding LB 1241 in support of the legislative bill that I spoke about on February 3rd in the Education Committee. And I was informed by the legal counsel of the NDE that I could not read verbatim my comment because it is related to a certificate holder, and so it might influence the board should the certificate holder ever be in front of you. I don't agree with that because I believe that it's a First Amendment thing and not a policy thing. So the reason that I was concerned about not being allowed to exercise my First Amendment right is because we all have a right to know that we've got people who have been convicted of crimes that have valid teaching certificates, okay? And I wasn't clear as to why I was able to speak at an education legislative hearing and identifying this person and then not here at the Board of Education. So that's confusing to me because it's a First Amendment thing and not a policy thing. But if you want to know what I was going to speak about, my email address is loan, loan.eby@gmail.com. And I don't know if the handouts that I gave you, if that's going to be public record or if you're going to seal that. So we have that. But the intent of LB 1241 and why I support it is as follows. To provide requirements relating to applications for employment by and employment of certain individuals by a school board or governing authority of a public, private, non-denominational or parochial school, to provide for civil penalties and to provide powers and duties to the State Department of Education. So basically, when Senator Merman spoke about 1241, it was to stop passing the trash, so that we've got educators not going from school to school when they have issues with their resume or their performance regarding child sexual assault. I've got 3 examples of certificate holders who have been arrested and convicted of child sexual assault, and they still have valid teaching certificates, and they could be hired effectively in the state of Nebraska. So what I was imploring each of you to consider is to devise a mechanism in which the public, or when it's known that these people are arrested or charged for such, to identify that on the NDE website so that there is disciplinary information, so that we're not passing the trash and protecting our children. We can't play Russian roulette with their lives. And so that's what I wanted to comment about, was to bring your attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Pinkerton and Doug Kagan, you'll be next.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Pinkerton, Omaha Benson High School class of 1971, grad of UNL 1974 in Education and Human Sciences. Good morning and congratulations to President Tegmeyer on her reelection, and to my representative, new Vice President Liz Renner. Effective reading instruction, it seems, is a priority that Rahm Emanuel embraces with enthusiasm. I have provided you with a piece from the Wall Street Journal. The former elected and appointed public official asks, are teachers equipped to succeed at this fundamental task, and are they supported when they need help? Emanuel details a visit to Urban F.B. Woodley Elementary School in majority black Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He's studying what's been called the Mississippi Miracle, I know you've heard of, Mississippi's rise in 4th grade reading proficiency from 49th to 9th in the nation. Mississippi's phonics-based system with accountability, former Netscape CEO Jim Barksdale explained to Emanuel, would be better understood as the Mississippi Marathon. Thanks for your work prioritizing literacy. And another note, I understand that the Whites family donated $15,000 to the campaign of Deb Neary. If that's the case, I would appreciate her recusing herself from today's 7.3A vote on the learning community due to the Whites family's close involvement with the learning community.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I will have to cut you off on that comment.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Doug Kagan.
Good morning. Doug Kagan, Omaha, Nebraska, representing Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. This legislative session, 6 state senators introduced LB 1024, which, beginning with the 2027-28 school year, would require each school district, in consultation with the State Department of Education, to include instruction on the history of communism within the social studies curriculum that is age appropriate, and include the history of communism in the U.S., domestic communist movements and their associated programs and tactics, and the increasing threat of communism in our nation. This educational initiative is necessary here for several reasons. U.S. public schools are not educating students about the truths of socialism and communism sufficiently, how these ideologies have become so prevalent today in the U.S., and the threats they pose to our individual liberties, democratic institutions, and economic prosperity. From a young age, our youth become exposed to a pablum of left-wing propaganda from our media, churches, social media, and sadly from some public schools. Merely examine the riots of 2020 and the current anti-ICE riots, where hammer and sickle red flags wave prominently. According to several polls conducted over the past years, these deliberate efforts to indoctrinate our youth have paid enormous dividends. Most young Americans do not understand socialist philosophy, are ignorant of socialist history, and cannot accurately define socialism or communism in general terms. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, among other pollsters, conducted a poll with YouGov to ascertain Americans' preferred form of government. The results are alarming. In its poll, it found that more than half of millennials say they would prefer to live in a socialist or communist country. Only 40% want to live in a capitalist America. By partial way of explanation, over 25% of millennials report receiving no education on the ideology of Marx and Lenin or the history of communist regimes. Nebraska should mirror the Florida Initiative, a law requiring public schools to teach about communism here and abroad from kindergarten through high school. The curriculum prepares students to withstand indoctrination on communism from sources including schools and colleges, and teaches the history of U.S. communism and domestic communist movements, including their organizations and subversive tactics. There is comparative discussion of political ideologies such as communism and totalitarianism, which conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy, reflecting the founding principles of our nation. And below, I've given you an index of suggested readings. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Epp.
My name is Greg Epp, Giltner, Nebraska. The year is 1962. The Supreme Court removes prayer from schools. Within 12 months, the court also removes Bibles from schools. And in the decade that follows, religious freedoms were under attack, so much so that by 1971, in a case called Lemon versus Kurtzman, the court creates what is known as the Lemon test. Lemon restricted religious activity in the public arena so that to be constitutional, the primary focus had to be secular. And since 1971, the Lemon test has been cited over 7,000 times in the last 50 plus years to restrict religious activity by the courts. Interestingly, the Supreme Court recently reversed its position on the Lemon test. In 2019, in the Bladenburg Cross case, and in 2022 in the Coach Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, they put in this language: long-standing religiously expressive monuments, symbols, and practices require a strong presumption of constitutionality. So if you can show that it's been in the culture a long period of time, we're going to deem it constitutional. In the Kennedy case, midway through the oral arguments, Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch say to each other, "It's time we get rid of the Lemon test." And that's what they did. Lemon test is out. It's replaced with long-standing history and tradition. And this is a game changer. A little history. In 1789, Congress enacts what is known as the Northwest Ordinance. You want to become a state, you have to comply with that ordinance. Article 3 declares religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Encouraged in what? Upholding religion, morality, and knowledge. And our current Constitution in Nebraska, adopted in 1875, has virtually that same language in it, and that language is still in our Constitution today. In 1828, Noah Webster, in his original dictionary, which had 70,000 words, 27% of the definitions took the reader back to the Bible to illustrate the meaning of the words. 27%. Noah Webster said, "Of all the miseries and evils which men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war, proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible." And this is what you're facing today. The left can't define what a woman is. They push for gender changes and the mutilation of your children. The left pushes for the sexualization of your children. They push to protect pornography in your libraries. The left pushes for boys and girls sports. They push for boys and girls locker rooms. They push for kitty litter in your bathrooms. Nothing they push for is life-giving, and you are left to deal with the fallout of their failed ideologies. So where does that leave us now? Where God needs to be brought back into our schools. Where prayer has been removed, it can come back. Where the 10 Commandments have been taken down, they can be put back up. This is the 250-year celebration of our country. Our social studies standards need to include the biblical foundation upon which our founding fathers built this great nation. And one last comment. The only religion which passes the, quote, long-standing history and tradition test is Christianity. All right, thank you.
Okay, next up, Caroline Epp.
Hello, I'm Caroline at Giltner, Nebraska. Starting this past November, I have had the opportunity to write a series of articles on the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence for the Aurora News-Register and 3 other newspapers. I have been amazed at the signers' zealous dedication to God and this country. Several of them started Bible societies because they knew it was essential to good government for people to know what the Bible says. John Adams wrote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Benjamin Rush, known as the father of public education, said regarding the priorities of public schools, number 1, teach the rising generation to love and serve God. Teach young people to love and serve their country. And 3, teach young people to love their family. Benjamin Rush put country before family because, in his words, if you lose control of your country, it will become the great enemy of your family. George Washington said, "Of all the habits and dispositions which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." Gouverneur Morris, credited with penning the preamble of the Constitution and signer thereof, said, "Religion is the only solid basis of good morals. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man towards God." John Jay, first Supreme Court Chief Justice, said, "Every member of the state ought diligently to read and to study the Constitution of his country and teach the rising generation to be free. By knowing their rights, they will sooner perceive when they are violated and be better prepared to defend and assert them." It should be pointed out that our Constitution was based on biblical principles. Donald Lutz, University of Houston, led a 10-year study called "The Origins of American Constitutionalism," which traced every quote from the Founding Fathers during what was considered the founding era to their original source. They documented who or what were the most quoted sources. The fourth most quoted source was John Locke at 2.9%. Third was Blackstone at 7.9%. Second was Montesquieu at 8.3%. And the number one most quoted source was the Bible at 34%. Thomas Jefferson said, "No nation has ever existed or been governed without religion, nor can be. The Christian religion is the best religion that has been given to man, and I, as chief magistrate of the nation, am bound to give it the sanction of my example." From what I have learned about our 56 signers, it is most essential that God and the Bible be brought back into our schools to maintain this free country. It is our history. Thank you.
All right, thank you to all of our public commenters today. There is no written comment. Agenda item 6. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Per board policy, there is no discussion on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Renner,
Yes.
Douglas,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Schoenhoff,
Yes.
8 yes.
The affirmative has it, and the consent agenda is adopted. The next item of business are the reports from the standing committees. I will report on behalf of the Executive Committee meeting. The Executive Committee reports on its February 5th, 2026 meeting. Members present were Chair Elizabeth Tegmeyer, Vice Chair Liz Renner, Sherry Jones, and Deborah Neary. On a weekly basis, the committee has reviewed and advised the Commissioner on 2026 proposed state legislation, NDE's position, and associated actions. The committee will continue to meet weekly throughout the duration of the session. The committee reviewed 2 information items. First, the committee received information regarding the proposed revisions to the Nebraska Council on Teacher Education, known as NCTE, and their organizational policies. Second, the committee received an update from NDE staff on implementation of the strategic plan. I'm just going to give us an aside. You did note as you entered the board room that the 5 values are listed on the big posters out front. This concludes the Executive Committee report. Chair Elizabeth Tegmeyer. Are there any questions on the Executive Committee report? Okay, seeing none.
Sorry, I had asked for 2 of the
That's
is
the
that
next-
coming up?
That's the next agenda
Okay.
item. Agenda item 7.1, this is to review 2026 proposed state legislation. Let me scroll up. As board members know, there is a running document within the Executive Committee report. So are there questions or discussions on any of the 2026 proposed state legislation?
So I'm confused.
This would be when it would come in.
Okay, but I guess I asked that it be put on the agenda because I didn't write down the numbers of what they are. So I thought they would be listed, the 2 pieces of legislation I thought deserve some discussion. So, and I thought they'd be in the minutes from the meeting. So I'm not seeing those. Thanks.
Hang on. I appreciate everyone's patience. I'm just accessing our Executive Committee from last week. I believe the first one that you wanted to discuss was LB 1050.
Okay.
And that was to amend the Nebraska Reading Improvement Act. Can you engage your microphone?
I guess I'll start with the one that I'm most disturbed about. When we discussed in the legislative or in the executive committee 1224, which I'll just summarize. It prohibits children from transferring to an exempt school during certain child abuse or neglect investigations, and it prohibits persons convicted of certain crimes from monitoring or providing instruction at such schools. So what it says is if you received whether a misdemeanor or a felony, but it involves child abuse or child neglect, that you should not be allowed to take your child out of a school system and put it in a home school, because obviously if you have a child abuse charge, what happens sometimes is parents don't want schools or government up in their business, and so they will homeschool. And while a child abuse charge is being reviewed, this is saying that children should have to be left in their school situation, be in a public school, because it is often, for those of you that are familiar with negligence and abuse for children, it's often somebody at school that is noticing the problems, the bruises, the challenges. What our committee discussed, there are 2 committee members that believed even if it was a child abuse misdemeanor, that should not affect a student, that they believe that a student should still be able to be pulled out of school, away from the watchful eyes of students, and be put in a homeschool. And my belief about this was that if someone has a child abuse charge, even if it's a misdemeanor, and the example that was used in our committee was, what if somebody's driving erratically down the street and they have children in the back seat, and that is a misdemeanor, and they're driving fast and erratically, so that becomes a child abuse misdemeanor. They didn't think that, 2 of our committee members didn't believe that was an issue at all. And I guess just because I've been involved, I've had 8 foster kids, I've been involved with the foster care system for decades, and I guess I just understand what the red flags and the signs are, that if you have a parent driving erratically and at a speed with children in the back seat, and you get caught in that is child abuse or child negligence, that is a sign of something bigger going on. And it is a sign of a family in chaos. And I would believe that we would want to protect our children at this point. And so I will say the Nebraska State School Board Association took on discussion of this legislation and also supported it. And so I was disappointed that we do have board members that aren't concerned, and I don't want to speak for them, so I hope they'll speak for themselves, obviously, but sometimes we aren't transparent here in this group about but two board members expressed that they were okay with a misdemeanor child abuse charge, and they felt like it was okay for a child to be removed out of a public school and into a homeschool. And I apologize if I've misunderstood or misrepresented, so I hope if I have other people will speak up and represent. But I really felt like I wanted a vote on this because even though it has been discussed in committee, and we showed up neutral, I really want the students of Nebraska to know that we want to protect them. And if there's ever a child abuse charge of any kind, that we want to make sure that they're protected and under the watchful eyes of our schools. So I'd love some conversation about this.
So in committee, the example I gave was not driving erratically. It was saying if I'm pulled over driving above the speed limit, whatever that is, they can give it. In having a conversation since our last executive committee meeting with a friend, she had a family member, her sister, did not come to a complete stop at a stop sign and was pulled over. And when she expressed concern about the citation, the officer looked in the back of her car and said, you know, I can also tack on misdemeanor child abuse because you have kids in the back of your car. So a misdemeanor child abuse is unintentional and no injury to the child. And my concern that I expressed in the committee was that this could actually, if a family would be cited for this and they would be under investigation, current homeschool families, according to our staff who advises on the legislative bills, said they would not be able to renew their filing. I do want to protect children. I don't want children who are being abused, pulled out of public school to be homeschooled to avoid those watchful eyes. That's not what I wanted. We had two who were proponents of this bill, and we had two who had concerns. And the official stance was we had no stance on this bill because we could not reach a compromise to be neutral with the concerns that some of us had about how a unintentional no injury misdemeanor charge could affect families. So there was no middle ground, and so the board chose to not have to register any stance on this bill, which was heard already this week in committee. Any other members of the committee want to speak?
I'll just make a comment. I agree with everything that Elizabeth said. I was part of that meeting. And to use the word aren't concerned, I'm very concerned about children's well-being, having been a school counselor and a parent. So what I would encourage board members to do is personally contact their legislators if regarding their views on this. You have the right to do that, and so I would encourage you to do that. Also, I think this is heavy with presumption of guilt. You know, only an accusation is needed. And I guess my experience as a school counselor, if law enforcement has evidence to believe there is significant neglect or abuse, the child was removed from the home. And I presume that would still be in place, and I would expect them to do that. So I take comfort in knowing that if there's actual evidence that the child would be removed from the home and placed in a safe environment. Thank you.
Liz?
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap us up. I was a proponent of LB 1224. I think it's important legislation, and I did reach out to the senator's office to get more clarification, and I think they were very thorough and very intentional in the creation of the bill to consider all possibilities. And it's the thing, I guess, that made me feel comfortable being a proponent, aside from the protection of children, is it's while someone's under investigation. So if you are investigated and then cleared of those charges, you are free to educate your child how you want. And I guess for me, I do hear the concern. There could be a stray situation here or there where an adult is unfairly unable to educate their child the way they want. But for me, that doesn't carry as much weight as the children that could possibly be pulled into an unhealthy or unsafe homeschooling environment by an abusive parent. I would rather err on the side of caution with children. And I guess ultimately, I feel like maybe this is a situation of letting perfect be the enemy of the good, that this legislation may not be perfect, but it's thoughtful and the intent is in the right place. And so I guess I just share that, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Any members who weren't on the committee have any questions? You have a question, Lisa?
I don't really have a question. I'm not on the committee, but I have had many of my constituents reach out to me with multiple concerns about the bill. And so I would like to speak for those that have reached out to me, if that's okay. Is that all right to do that? The thing that I heard over and over again with everyone, there was a plethora of different points that people pointed out, and I won't get into all of them. But the one that I heard again and again and again is, does this bill have potential to criminalize homeschoolers without due diligence? And so that was the point that I wanted to bring to the light. And I don't have the answers. I haven't spoken with anyone on this bill other than constituents.
Yeah, Liz would like to speak.
I would like to speak to that. From my conversation with their legislative aide, I don't think that, I think you're talking about scope creep, right? That you can expand the boundaries of this. And I don't think, one, that that's the intent of the bill, and two, that it would be possible legally. So I don't know that I would consider that a concern from what I learned about the bill.
Okay. Deb, you want to wrap it up?
Sure. I wanted to bring this to a vote of the board to see if we can undo or come up with a different message to the state legislature. So I'd like to make a motion that we have a vote about whether each individual member supports the bill or opposes the bill or is neutral. So that we can, I mean, that's my understanding, that the whole board has the opportunity to weigh in on our positions, that it isn't just end with the executive committee. So what is the best way to accomplish that?
That's what I'm trying,
Yeah.
I'm trying to whisper to see
Okay.
how we do this, because I know our staff did take down notes during the committee, and so I think this might be a question for them. Dr. Four?
I'm Ryan Four. The notes that I had from the executive committee on this topic was a request for a public discussion. So this standing item that is on the agenda is the standing item that the board has used now for the second year for discussion of any topics that board members want to bring forward on bills. There wasn't a request for a specific action item on this bill.
So let me say this. Can I, since there isn't an action item, I guess I didn't clearly state what I was requesting. My bad. So what I'd like to do then is ask if there's anyone that believes this should go back to the executive committee for another review, just based on the fact that, you know, the School Board Association across the state of Nebraska, hundreds of school districts have said that this is an important bill, that it does involve anybody with a child abuse or negligence accusation, that if anyone feels that this should be reviewed, would you speak up and let us know? And if you are happy with us opposing it, we've already heard from Elizabeth and Sherry that they oppose the bill as written.
Excuse me, there's no position.
Yeah, we have no position, and this is, I believe what you're trying to do is circumvent the fact that this isn't an action item by trying to gather consensus, and that's essentially taking a vote.
So I'm asking for people that haven't spoken up to speak up, because if you want it reviewed again by the executive committee, then, and I mean, it didn't pass an executive committee, so we did have 2 executive committee members that voted against this bill. So you know, you are on the record that you've opposed this.
There is no record in committee. We don't vote in committee. The committee did not come to a consensus on any stance, so no stance was taken, no letters were sent, no testimony was made.
So if anyone believes that we should be supporting the bill, can you let us know, and maybe this can go back to the executive committee?
That would be the most, if you would like to email the chair or vice chair.
I'd like to hear just right now if somebody believes that this should go back for a revisit. We're talking about child abuse, and if everyone is just happy with us opposing it, then you can be on the record for that too.
Okay, so we'll hear from members who aren't on the committee, who did not weigh in or give consensus. Maggie?
I'm sorry, just one. We're not on the
Too
record.
many people, we're not opposing. We are neither opposing nor neutral. There's no stance.
No stance, got it, okay.
Maggie?
Okay, I'm clear on the difference between no stance versus negative, or not doing it. I just wanted to say, I have not read the bill, looked at it. I don't have a lot of information on it. So I would like to do my homework on this. It's okay.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone else who isn't on the committee? Kristen?
I am in support of the bill, but I'm also in support of the board not taking a stance, because that was the process that the bill went through in executive committee.
Thank you. Kirk and Lisa, you're not on the committee. Do you want to speak or not?
Yeah, you took no stance, and that's what the committee decided. I think this is just more grandstanding, and you're calling out 2 board members because you don't agree with them. That's what this is about, so let's just call it what it is. We stick with what the committee said. There's no position. That's all this is. You took the opportunity to call out 2 board members. That's what this was about.
Lisa, do you want to?
I had really no idea, other than that I saw what was in here, proposed state legislation. I got wind of the fact that 1224 was on the board, along with one other one that I think is going to be brought up next. I had time to print it off. I had several people reach out to me on different platforms, email, texting, and sharing their concerns. So I honestly have not done my due diligence to go in and really research it. So I don't feel comfortable trying to vote on anything or change any kind of a stance. So I agree with you, Maggie, that it seems like we're kind of wasting everyone's time right now.
Okay.
So I'd like to say something, unless you wanted to first. So I'll make sure that Kristen understands that the process has always been to bring legislation to the full board for discussion, that we aren't the final decision makers. I think everyone needs to know that. I requested that these items be discussion items, and so I assumed they were going to be on the agenda and in the committee report so that people could look and be prepared. I would like them on the discussion and action item for next month, because I'm going to assume that the full legislative that may not have taken a position yet, and so I do want to bring it back, so I am hoping that all of you will. This is part of the process. This is child abuse and child neglect. And we are not standing with school board members from all over the state to protect children. This is written by the people that work in these fields and that understand what happens when a family's in chaos and when there are red flags. That the first and foremost thing should be to protect children. And so for anyone to say that that isn't the first and foremost consideration, then you can call me any name or accuse me of anything, but you are on the record for not supporting the bill. And Kristen, I just wanted to make sure you understood that the 8 years I've been on the board, the process is, and always has been, the executive committee doesn't make the final decision. Anytime we want to bring it to the full board, because we can't agree on something very important, there's a lot of bills we don't bring here. But this is an important part of the process that people weigh in.
Point of order.
This is child abuse and child neglect.
All right. Point of order has been called.
So what does that mean? That I need?
State your point.
We've already discussed this thoroughly, and we're hearing things that she just said we are on the record for not supporting it. There's no record of that. And we need to continue on with the next item.
I've asked for people to speak up and be clear about their position. This is child abuse and child neglect.
This is a point of order. One board member can't demand of fellow board members that they state their position. That's just not how a board works.
No, I'm not.
Do you want to speak to the other bill?
I'm just saying that by not speaking up, you are making yourself very clear.
Deb, you're making assumptions and accusations that are inappropriate in a board setting. Do you want to speak to the second bill that you asked to bring for discussion?
I think it's 1050. I actually, when we discussed this, didn't have strong feelings one way or another because I wasn't educated on this topic. But I was invited to, just like Liz Renner was, invited to a town hall that was filled with educators and parents and even people that have been held back in third grade because of reading. And what all the research seemed to be presented was that this legislation that would, I'll let you read it, but it's 1050, and it's amending the Reading Improvement Act to limit advancement to grade 4 when someone isn't proficient. And it's more complex than that, obviously. And the Nebraska State School Board Association does oppose it. Most educators that I've spoken with have opposed it, but especially the parents were strongly opposed to it. There were parents in the room that talked about, you know, that they felt like that was an individual decision that should be made by parents and not by the school system, that there's so many different reasons why someone might not be proficient, and that to have government involvement in something that's been working successfully for so long. Plus, they discussed the very harmful, negative, long-term impact that is caused, especially in this bullying environment that we have today, the stigma that is carried with a child for a lifetime. We had somebody speak up at this event who talked about, even to this day, people, are reminding him that he was held back in school. And so this is bigger than I think government involvement. I do believe that this is another one that if you believe that the executive committee should be revisiting, then I certainly would like to hear from anyone that supports the position of the Nebraska School Board Association, and that we should be against this bill.
Okay, so on 1050, when the executive committee met, Commissioner Maher's recommendation to the committee, the staff always reviews the bills and then gives a recommendation. Kind of just giving an overview for those of you who aren't on exec. They give a recommendation. And the commissioner's recommendation was neutral. And the committee concurred with that recommendation, and a letter was sent neutral, citing any concerns that we had about the bill. So that is where the Nebraska Board of Education stood and went in officially with neutral with concerns. And in my opinion, we are a separate and distinct body from the Nebraska Association of School Boards, and we do not have to mirror their stances on any bill. They are a body comprised of their school board members from throughout the state who likewise gather together to take stances and positions on bills, and we do not have to do exactly what another body does for their positions. That's my opinion. I think that there's a lot of information on both sides of this issue. That's why I felt very comfortable with a neutral stance and listing our concerns. Other executive board members, and then we'll go to those who weren't part of the conversation. Sorry, I scooched away from my mic. Any other executive members want to speak to 1050, and then we'll go to the 4 who aren't on the committee.
I don't know, I'm not sure I have a lot to add, except for I learned a lot more, unfortunately, after we had the executive committee discussion about the bill and the implications, and do regret that we were neutral on it. However, I am heartened that during the hearing there was a lot of there were a lot of people that spoke up with the concerns that I had about it to the education committee. So, I'm neutral on if we take this back to the executive committee or anything to that regard. I do feel that the community spoke on their behalf with their concerns to the right people, the legislature, or members of the education committee. So, yeah.
Sherry, did you want to comment on this, or? Okay. Members who are not on the executive committee, do you have any questions or comments to further board discussion? No? Lisa?
Yeah, I actually did go and testify for this bill on a personal level in front of the education committee at the legislature, and I typed up my statement and I have it on my website so anyone can see it. You can go back and watch it on the legislature's page, or you can look at Lisa for Nebraska, and in there it specifically states my views are my own. And I have there's too much to really talk through, but it is all public record and it is there for anyone who wishes to go and look at it. It's in my media/blog tab. And since doing that, I've also had parents reach out to me and say, thank you for helping to take away or removing the stigma of holding kids back to get them the help that they need while they're still while strategies are still developmentally appropriate and the situation is better for them to learn to read. And so with that being said, I think there are probably some strong opinions on both sides, and I'm trying to do my best to take a step back and listen to other opinions, and that's part of being a board and listening and being engaged in the civics process. So thank you for all of your work.
Thank you. Lisa, Kirk, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Maggie, yes.
I'm sorry, this is a repeat. Do you want us to email the whole exec committee after we do our homework?
Actually, please just email the chair and vice chair.
Okay.
Because if one person emails 4 more, then
good call.
Yes,
Thank
you're
you.
violating the Open Meetings Act. So if you can put both Board Member Renner and myself on your email, then we'll both get it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Deb. Okay, the next item of business, Chair Kristen Christensen will report on behalf of the Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
The Budget and Finance Committee reports that at its Thursday, February 5th meeting, members present were Kristen Christensen, Maggie Douglas, Kirk Penner, and Lisa Schoenhoff. The committee reviewed 4 action items. The first item reviewed was for a contract to build out a data collection process to meet federal post-school outcomes for students exiting special education programs. The committee recommends approval of this item. The second action item reviewed was to accept the preschool development grant funds and subcontract to fulfill grant requirements. The committee has no recommendation on this item. The committee then reviewed 2 mental health grants to recruit and retrain and train school psychologists. The committee discussed no recommendation on this item. The committee then reviewed 1 discussion item for board member travel expenses, noting no concerns. Last, the committee reviewed 3 information items, including an update on 21st Century Community Learning Center grant fund allocations, an update on the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant expenditures, and a contract for the Comprehensive English Learners Proficiency Assessment. This concludes the Budget and Finance Committee report. Kristen Christensen, Chair.
Thank you, Kristen. Are there any questions on the Budget and Finance Committee report? Okay. Is there a motion on item 7.2.b?
Yes, I move to authorize the commissioner to renew the contract to build out data collection processes to meet federal post-school outcome data report requirements.
Second.
It is moved and seconded to authorize the commissioner to renew the contract to build out data collection processes to meet federal post-school outcome data report requirements. Is there any discussion on this motion? The motion is to authorize the commissioner to renew the contract to build out data collection processes to meet federal post-school outcome data report requirements. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Christensen?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Renner?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Schoenhoff?
Yes.
Tegmeyer?
Yes.
Penner?
Yes.
8 yes.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to authorize the commissioner to renew the contract to build out data collection processes to meet the federal post-school outcome data report requirements is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.c?
Yes, I move to accept preschool development grant funds and authorize the commissioner to subcontract to fulfill grant requirements.
Second.
It is moved and seconded to accept preschool development grant funds and authorize the commissioner to subcontract to fulfill grant requirements. Is there any discussion on the motion? Sorry, yes, Lisa.
Okay, so this is, thank you. This is one that we talked about yesterday. It reminded me of a couple months ago when we discussed the e-kids. That was at our Fremont meeting. And it also, this conversation happened right after this prior one that we spoke with Amy Rohn on with the process to meet contract renewal to build out data collection for processes to meet federal post-school outcome, which that one really made sense to me because we're actually determining where kids are going after they graduate. Are they getting jobs? Are they being successful? And that's a direct way to tell how our programs here in the state are working. In the questions that I asked around this one, with the early childhood, the e-kids, and the eco data labs, I didn't ever get a solid explanation of how this data is going to directly impact. So we're using this money to partner with DHHS, and if you listen back to Lane explaining how, yes, when we share data with DHHS, we don't have that kind of control over our data anymore, and we can't say for sure how they're going to use the data or what they're going to do with it. And it also talks, so it does say the data sharing with cross agencies, government agencies, and then also to build cohorts with other states about our data. And so I have yet to be able to have a really determine how that data is going to directly benefit our students here in our public schools. And so with the questions that I asked, I still have that. That's just really not clear to me in how this partnership with DHHS is a direct positive impact on our kids.
Any other discussion or questions? I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm feeling like, so I'm like a little confused, and maybe we need to, I'm feeling like now I don't know what questions you asked and like what was, I'd kind of like an answer from not just you, but maybe from someone who.
Well, the first question I asked was, all right, I taught preschool. I said, I actually prefer not to have, even as a first and third grade teacher, I don't necessarily need a whole bunch of data to come in with my kids, because as a teacher, I'm going to observe them the second they walk in the door. And I'm going to be doing all of the things that effective teachers do around collecting my own data, so that I'm not having these preconceived judgments of data. Okay, so that was, but the way that was answered to me is, instead of looking at it as a trickle down with the data, look at it as a bottom up. So we're sharing the data up with other states and the federal government. And so then when I went home last night, I started to really try to think about, and when I asked, well, how is the federal government going to use this data to determine maybe deserts, but why do we need the federal government to determine which deserts we have for preschool, for state-funded preschool or federal-funded preschool? And is that what we're doing? And if we're sharing this data with DHHS and the federal government, is that going to have a direct impact? And so then they're saying they're going to use this data sharing to determine if it has a direct impact. So I'm having a hard time seeing how it all is really going to truly be a benefit to direct impact on our kids in our classrooms. And I do try to refrain from saying our kids, Nebraskan kids, okay?
Okay. Yeah, Deb?
I just have a question, and I apologize if this is repeating information, but did this item come to us with support from the committee, or just for a vote without support, meaning it at least was a 2-2 vote probably? Can someone help me understand the vote in the committee on that one?
Once again, committees don't vote. Does this committee have a recommendation?
Yeah, I can answer that. The report that I had given earlier said let me read it word for word. The committee has no recommendation on this item. So we were not at a consensus in committee.
Thank you, Kristen.
So then, now that that's been answered, can I continue my comment? Okay. So let me ask one more question before did the committee, they couldn't make a recommendation, did they work out a compromise for how we could bring this to success, or was it just comments about what they don't like?
Does
Or
anyone,
discussions of compromises is what I'm asking.
Or were there like discussions about how to make it better? Maybe yeah, Kristen, we'll let you answer as the chair.
Thanks so much. This item, we didn't discuss a compromise because I guess in my understanding of this item, there isn't space for compromise. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it, what this actually is and what this actually does. DHHS was awarded a grant from the federal government. This item is for us to accept part of that grant from DHHS to carry out some of the work and then subcontract with EC Data Labs for them to consult us in our work, is what this item is that's what we're voting on. So there isn't really a whole lot of room, like other agenda items that we've had, to create a compromise in how we can make this more palatable for some board members. So no, there wasn't discussion on compromise for this item.
Liz?
Yeah, I have. I thought I knew how I wanted to weigh in on this, but I guess I have questions now because
Do you have questions for board members or staff?
I think Kristen could probably answer this, and if not, well, maybe you can't. Well, you tell me, and then I can ask for staff clarification. If we vote against accepting these grant funds, and DHHS does accept them, is any of this work able to proceed? Do we know?
That's a great question, and we hadn't talked about that in committee, and I wondered the same thing, so I'm not able to answer that for
So
you.
I think we need Melody Hobson to come and answer. Oh, Dr. Stavum. Dr. Stavum.
And I have a second question.
Is it for her?
Yeah, it's probably not appropriate, so never mind.
As well.
Would it help for me to
No,
say the
I think we
question?
can just kind of recap, and if you reference your rationale, this starts at the state level with the governor indicating that this is something that the state of Nebraska would potentially participate in, so that allows the authorization to happen from that level because the data that's provided by Nebraska contributes to national data on early childhood. And so this is saying that Nebraska said, yes, we are willing to be part of this. Then the grant was applied for and received. And Kristen was correct. Then we become a sub-participant in that But what this does is provides Nebraska level data that then gets submitted along with multiple other states to provide that national landscape. I think that's the easiest way to say this. If you have specific questions about the rest of the details, Melody is available to answer that.
I think I'm echoing Lisa's question, that we have confidence that this data is secure once it leaves the state of Nebraska. And if you could reassure that.
So the data does not leave Nebraska. All of the items that would be collected are currently collected either for federal or state requirements for other legal purposes. The data, the way that this is envisioned is it is a federated system in that no reports are created to be maintained permanently. All of this is aggregated data. None of this is individually identifiable because, you know, we would be bound like anything else with FERPA and HIPAA and those requirements, and then within NDE's masking rules.
So are we still bound by FERPA and HIPAA when we contract with EC Data Lab?
Yes.
Are they bound by FERPA and HIPAA?
I think so. That is a legal question that I'm not qualified to answer.
Dr.
We would
Stevens,
not be
do you-
sharing data with them. They would be providing technical assistance to us.
So how, you said that this is data that's already being collected by the state and federal government. So how, help me understand, how is, like, so what are we doing here? If we're already
Yes.
collecting this
So-
data, what are we doing?
The data right now is very siloed. And to be able to build a picture of where services are or longitudinally how children benefit from programs, in the aggregate, it is really difficult to do. One of the things, there are some, in your materials in Spark, there were some use cases that were in there. One of them is that there is no way at this point to get a distinct count of children. I can't tell you how many kids are being served by more than one program or not a program at all. And then another one is working closely with the Head Start programs to make sure that their data can be used effectively. And then another use case is then following groups of children to see if programs are benefiting them.
Okay, somebody else ask a question, because I know I had jotted down some things, so I'm trying to dig through and still moderate. Deb and then Kirk, please. Oh, Kirk and then Deb.
Just a question. So this is, you're collecting data on preschool students. Is that what you're?
Using data that's already collected.
So, and your comment was, we don't know which kid is getting which service, or if they're going to a.
We don't know which areas the services, there are deserts of services based on the multiple programs that are out there.
So if I'm going to a private preschool, would you have that information, or would you be gathering that information? Okay.
Can I clarify one thing?
Kristen.
This is for children from birth to 5, so not just preschool, not just in like a Head Start program, but any students, any kids that might receive services from birth to 5.
Okay, so I found my question, and you're gonna be like, oh, same song, second verse, same as the first. Use case number 4, early literacy, because I knew I had read through this, and it said some important questions that can be addressed by this. So I'm skipping through. I'm not going to read through the whole document for everybody, but so these are questions that can be addressed. How do early literacy or early childhood experiences influence third grade reading outcomes? And I think this is the big one. Which early literacy indicators are most strongly associated with later reading success? And my question is, do we have, I'm just not really certain that we have early identification and intervention for what ends up being reading difficulties. That's my concern, because for the timing of interventions, and I have some information that I received from the Nebraska Dyslexia Association, children can be screened for risk in preschool, so ages 4 and 5. And I have the documentation, I have the reports, Gab et al., Shaywitz and Shaywitz. These are published documents, but there's definitely things to look for in that 4 to 6 year. And my question, I guess my concern is, things to look for: siblings who have dyslexia, difficulty with rhyming, blending, or segmenting sounds, slower and accurate learning of letter sound correspondence, slow naming of colors, objects, letters. So these are all things that happen in a preschool setting: weak vocabulary, sentence repetition, and narrative skills, difficulty repeating nonsense words. And my only concern, I'm going back to that document, is we're looking for things that are associated with later reading success, but I think we need to look at the flip side of it and look at what are indicators that this child is going to struggle, because it takes 4 times as long when we catch dyslexia in 4th grade than when we can catch it in pre-K or kindergarten. It takes 4 times as long for that child to learn. And so that's a big concern of mine, is that we make sure that we're always flipping and identifying early. And maybe that's not a question, but I'd love to hear from you, because you created this document.
Yeah.
Can you speak to looking for early indicators of a child who's going to struggle in reading?
I think, yes, again, this would not be looking for each individual child or diagnosing any child. It will be looking for classrooms that don't do certain things. Are those kids going to struggle more? Classrooms that do the certain practices, are they going to benefit greater than others? So this is aggregate data that we're looking at, and we're looking at patterns and not individual children. That would be something that would have to happen at the classroom level.
Okay, so you're looking for indicators in the classrooms of direct reading instruction, or that evidence-based direct instruction, and because we know that is what helps children learn to read. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, I have to word that
Yeah.
as a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think your point is well taken. I think when we continue to remember the purpose of this type of an agreement, it's to be able to look at that national landscape and say, here are patterns that we notice. I mean, we see that in other national reports on reading or math or workforce, or just many kind of national level landscape reports. This would be that for grabbing that preschool information. I don't think we know specifically how those questions find their way into that particular thing. We could maybe look a little bit more on that, but we do know there are specific preschool strategies that represent best practice that would be represented in that data, that we could say Nebraska has had the data accounted for. So when we look at that national report on best practices for literacy beginning in early childhood, Nebraska's data would be represented in whatever that national level report would say.
Okay, so one last question, bear with me. So when we look at the best practices, and then we say, okay, we see these best practices in these early childhood programs, then are we then tracing that out to that 3rd grade literacy? And are we tracing that out as far as then when we see continued reading difficulty by children?
You could, on many fronts. For this purpose, it would, if a report comes out or if data has been shared, we can say Nebraska's data says this about that particular thing. If we don't participate in this data sharing, that report would come out, it wouldn't include Nebraska data. So we could still glean some meaning from that, but our Nebraska level data wouldn't be included in it.
Okay, I lied. I have another question. You said that report, but we would still have this data. We just wouldn't be included in the
national
federal-
sharing of it.
And this is a federal sharing of data.
Correct.
Okay.
You can answer that specifically.
This is a federal grant, and looking at, to be able, and we can look at state level data with that. Right now, we don't have that capacity to do that.
We don't have the capacity to look at our own state level data?
Not combined from multiple sources, not aggregated together like this.
Okay. All right, I promise that was my
That's all right.
last. So
So-
I'm going to pass on to any other board members. Lisa, you had looked confused too.
I'm sorry, I have done a lot of thinking about this, but one of the other things that I wanted to ask is, so when we look at subcontracting $316,000 to EC Data Labs to receive technical assistance and participate in a cohort of states that are working on similar data challenges with an entity to provide assistance with building an early childhood technology solution roadmap as required by the grant application. Have you looked at a report that has been put out with other states by EC Data Labs?
EC Data Labs. I don't, their reports would be about working with other states, so it would have to be the other state reports. We've looked at some state reports. I am not the expert in those data. That would be our project manager and programmers. But it is out there with other states.
EC Data Labs is being enlisted by the cohort of states, correct? Not just the state of Nebraska. They're attached to the grant work. I would just direct everybody back to that rationale statement that talks about this being a state-level decision for the participation. And so that's what, this isn't us initiating this. This is us saying, yes, as directed at a state level, the governor saying yes first, that Nebraska would be willing to participate in this, and then us being one of the sub-grantees for the grant that came to DHHS. I just want that clear.
Liz?
This isn't just our own thing.
So I have a question. It clearly we're engaged, and I think maybe some members of the board might want more time to ask questions and discuss with each other. So what would happen if this were delayed, if the board decided to delay the vote on this for another month? Would that seriously hamper the progress?
What that would do this is a 12-month grant, and so it started January 1st, and of course we would not do anything without state board approval. So that would mean that Nebraska's work would start in March. I mean, Department of Education's work would start in March.
And now I can't remember if I asked this, but if we voted today and voted no, what does our lack of participation do to this project?
I'm not sure that I can prognosticate that. There were 3 critical elements. This is a part of like a couple of them, and so HHS would have to determine some other way to do that.
Okay. Could I?
Okay, let me see if there's, are there any other board questions? Okay, Liz?
I'd like to make a motion. So I'd like to make a motion to postpone voting on this item until our next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to delay this item until the March meeting for an action. Is there any discussion on this? Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Christensen?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Renner?
Is it
Renner.
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Schoenhoff,
No.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner,
No.
6 yes, 2 no.
The affirmative has it, and this item will be delayed or postponed until the March meeting, where it will appear as an action item. Do we need, so the previous motion is,
It's still out there.
okay,
And so when you come to that, you'll just ask for discussion on it.
okay, thank you. All right, thank you. A little new experience there. All right, so do we have a motion on 7.2.d? There is no motion on that one. 7.2.e, no motion. All right, Chair Lisa Schoenhoff will report on behalf of the Planning and Evaluation Committee meeting.
The Planning and Evaluation Committee reports on their committee meeting on February 5th, 2026. The members present were Lisa Schoenhoff, Sherry Jones, Deborah Neary, and Kristen Christensen. The committee reviewed one action item related to the Community Achievement Plan of the Learning Community of Douglas and Sarpy Counties. The committee has no recommendation on this item. The committee reviewed informational items related to the Rule 11 waiver request for Ord Public Schools, update of the Social Studies Content Standards Review, and other content standards review, contract for general and alternate statewide assessment services, priority school designation process update, and the annual reports for approved pilot programs and processes. The committee also reviewed informational items related to the Rule 10 waiver request from Hyannis Public Schools, approval of plans of corrections for Rule 10, 14, and 18 school systems, approval of non-public schools for the 26-27 school year, and approval of interim program schools for 26-27 school year. NDE staff will bring informational items to a future meeting for discussion and subsequent approval where appropriate. This concludes the Planning and Evaluation report.
Are there any questions on the Planning and Evaluation Committee report? Is there a motion on item 7.3.a?
Yes. I move to approve the cap of the learning community of Douglas and Sarpy counties.
Second?
It is moved and seconded to approve the cap of the learning community of Douglas and Sarpy counties. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I do have a statement I'd like to make. Since our January board meeting, several of us board members were given the opportunity to meet with some learning community staff and given a tour of North and South Omaha Learning Centers. I appreciated this opportunity. Some of my questions were answered with additional questions being raised. My greatest concern still remains the learning community's partnership with One World Health. Here's what I've learned about One World Health. Children ages 12 and up can visit the off-campus youth clinic with or without a parent. This, in my belief, undermines parental authority. One World Health offerings include, quote, hormone therapy and medical transition assistance for transgender individuals, end of quote. In my opinion, this confuses and harms our children. One World Health provides free Plan B kits at their teen and youth adult health centers. And Plan B otherwise is known as the morning after pill. In my opinion, this encourages teens to be sexually active. And although One World Health does not provide abortion services, the clinic can refer minors to such service providers in Omaha. And again, in my opinion, these providers hurt women and kill babies in the womb. My vote today will be based on information I received and gathered and guided by my conscience. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? Lisa?
I'm sorry, I was a little thrown off by skipping over 2 of our action items, so now that I'm back on track, I would also like to thank the staff at the learning community for the tour. It was great to get out and see some of the work that they're doing. While there, I did have some new learnings. I learned that the partnership with One World actually they have all of their employees, or a large majority of the employees are employed by One World Health, and that means that the One World Health employees go out and do the home visits, and they do the parent university, and they even teach the preschool classes. And so one of the concerns that I have is that under the federal law known as FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, if medical and counseling records are included in a child's education records, they are actually unprotected by HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act passed by Congress in 1996. Thus, very sensitive mental and physical health information can be shared outside of the school without parent consent. FERPA does not include a category called treatment records or records made by a physician, psychologist, or other recognized professional for treatment purposes. These are not considered education records unless they are shared beyond the treating professional. Once shared, they lose that special status and become regular education records. So the moment a counseling or medical record is placed in the general education file or shared with others in the school, it no longer receives the highest privacy protection. So when we blur the lines between public education and public health, it can be a very slippery slope in protecting student data.
Maggie?
When we went on the tour, I thought that One World made it very clear that they have 2 streams of income in their organization. One is for health and one is for education, and they do not cross. So anything to do with their medical services has nothing to do with their work with the learning community. That's how I understood it.
Liz?
Well, I would just like to say also a thank you to the learning community for all the work they've done to educate us on what they do. They were more than generous with their time and preparations for our tour. And I feel like the concerns are really far afield of what we're approving money and a budget for. And again, I guess I'll just share, it feels a bit to me, again, like we're letting perfect be the enemy of good, that, if something crosses your personal red line, we all have those red lines, but I would hope that as elected officials, we would work to negotiate and find some way to work together and collaborate, because to vote against this, it really is doing significant work for so many vulnerable students and families in Douglas and Sarpy County. And I know several of us, that's part of our districts, and I would hate to not support all of the very important work they do for something that is what one partner does separate from what we would be funding. So I just share that concern and just wanted to, again, say thank you to the learning community.
Appreciate the discussion. Thank you. I just want to make sure there's no public confusion about the plan before us, that there's absolutely no part of this plan that includes anything regarding gender affirming care or talking to students about those topics. That's nowhere in this. I appreciated the fact that I've toured the learning community so many times, and I had an emergency come up that day, but I really believe that when we can support families in chaos and support our most vulnerable students, we're not just helping those families, but we're helping everyone in the school that they go to. Because if those individuals, if some of their needs aren't being met, they are going to come into the classroom and cause chaos for other students. So there's a reason that the Learning Community Plan has been around for a long time, because there's a huge need. And I really am seeing a recurring theme that I'm hearing people talk about negative things. Frequently, it's culture war topics that concern me, but they'll talk about negative things and they're willing to vote down something that will derail or dismantle important programs. This board has done it multiple times. But my understanding of leadership has always been to come to every problem with a compromise or a solution. But that's not what's happening here. And we also aren't giving the board, a lot of these votes are just happening in quiet without transparency. So the board is, I have faith in our board today that we're going to pass this plan. And I appreciate those board members that have done their homework. I'm disappointed that if you're voting against it, you never came forward with a compromise or a way for us to make this work. We've been working on this plan since last October, and I've not once heard a suggestion for a compromise from anybody. So I am optimistic we're going to pass today, and I really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into these discussions. Thank you.
Any questions, any more? Well, I, too, have done some research and looking into the Community Achievement Plan. I spent a lot of time on this because to me, as a state board member, our number one priority is student achievement and proficiency. And so I spent a lot of time on this. This is my number one thing, is how are students achieving and moving forward. And so I pulled district ELA and math scores from all 11 of the school districts that are part of the learning community, and looked at their numbers and did a deep dive into their school ratings, which ones were excellent, great, good, or needs improvement. Because no matter what, to me, the number one goal, of course, is how our students do. And even in the Learning Community Achievement Plan, it talks about continuing to address achievement barriers. So we want students to achieve. We want all of our interventions or our work to be research evidence-based and utilize best practices in addressing achievement issues. That's the number one thing. And what I've noticed when I pulled this up is that since 2021 to 2022 school year, Omaha Public Schools, who is the largest recipient of the learning community funding at 8.2 million. They have been a needs support to improve school district with over 52,000 students. That's really concerning to me that the largest district in our entire state is actually not getting the help they need despite the infusion of state aid. And state aid is different from our property taxes that most or a significant portion funds school districts through property taxes. State aid is taken out of our general fund, which means every Nebraskan has a stake in every school that receives state aid because we're all helping to fund that. And so that's been a big concern for me. I do have concerns about this plan. The districts self-report their progress. There has been, and there is no, from the past plan to this plan, there are no penalties for failure when they don't meet their goals. There's no independent evaluation authority with corrective power other than this board. This board is the last stop. We don't have any consequences for persistent failure, and I'm not talking about failure of students. I'm talking about failure of systems, because we're not getting to the heart of this. And that's my concern with this, is this plan for 2026 to 2029 is not significantly different from 2023 to 2025. And so what I see is this year, $8.7 million of additional state aid going to Douglas and Sarpy County with no indication that things are going to change or be better. And that's my concern. That's my concern for the 14 schools, 14 elementary schools in OPS that less than 30% of the students in third grade are reading at grade level. Less than 30%, 14 elementary schools and less than 30%. So I have concerns with this plan, that this plan is not going to change the trajectory for the learning community because the plan is not significantly different. So we're doing the same thing that we've been doing, hoping to get better results. Any other board members? Okay. Deb? With the recording scene? No. Oh, Liz?
I just want to offer up that I think you make a point to me that would warrant more discussion, because I think that is an area for some compromise, that if we are the body with the buck ends here or what stops here, whatever that saying is, that maybe that's a place that we could find some room to navigate with the plan to build some guardrails for achievement. So I'm going to do what I did again.
Well, can I?
Yeah.
Can I just? I want.
There's your March 1 deadline.
I do want to say I'm not picking on Omaha. I pulled the data from all the schools, and I'm not trying to pick on any one district. I mean, I looked at all of their scores. I spent time going into each district. It does take some time, and I did this out of a genuine concern. And my concern is, I would rather see, and I know that this isn't the mechanism of this, but I would rather see a school that needs support to improve, that has 52,000 students plus in it, get the targeted support they need, become a priority district so that we can really move them along. I think that there are better ways to do it than this community achievement plan is indicating to me. That's my concern. I was not invited on the tour. Kirk and I were, I believe, the only two board members who didn't know about the tour of the learning communities. So I have no opinion about what is or is not happening in that, I have a comparison of two different plans, the previous one and the current one, and I have the data. And I'm going back to the data, and I'm saying the significant outpouring, how do I go back to District 7 and justify almost $9 million going into a plan that doesn't seem to be having an effectual impact on the students of these districts? Deb?
I appreciate the work that you've done, Elizabeth, and I think that it's a good discussion to have. I'm sad that it's the 11th hour and we're just starting that discussion. I also want to just clarify some information about Omaha Public Schools. I guess just because I've worked with that school district for so long. The data you see is correct, but I think we have to remember that there's a history, decades of white flight that has created these smaller school districts, Elkhorn, Bennington, in the early years, Millard. There has always been this white flight away from the inner core of the city. And so what is left within OPS is, students, many refugees, many immigrants. There's 150 languages being spoken. There's, I believe, I don't know the exact number, but it's near 80% of students on free and reduced lunch. I mean, there's a level of poverty and challenges that is unprecedented with any other school district in the state. And so I just think it's important to talk about that too. The other piece of that is I really love how the deep dive that you've taken, and these are discussions worth having. The fear that I have is what we've been doing is dismantling something overnight without our due process of coming up with a better plan. To take away funding from 13 school districts all at once without a replacement plan concerns me. So I do hope that there is some possibilities of compromises that we could be working on. Maybe we review the plan and approve it only for 1 year or something, where we have time to work with all the people that need to be a part of the discussion to build something better rather than just dismantle. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I was hoping that hey, let's make him a priority district. That is my suggestion. Is I do recognize that there are challenges that OPS experiences. There are challenges that we experience in rural Nebraska that are unique. We don't have huge foundations. We don't have community resources. We don't have an Omaha Symphony coming into our schools. We don't have access to things. Basic thing, we needed a protractor for school. I went to every store in North Platte, which includes Walmart and a handful of dollar stores with dollar in their name. I could not find a protractor. Now, I've ordered stuff in Lincoln delivered from Amazon, and it comes the next day. And I mean, I was knocked off my seat. What? It's here already? It took 8 days to get a protractor from Amazon. So I do understand that each district has very unique challenges to their education process, but I don't think, I mean, that's, they attribute it to Albert Einstein. I don't know if he said it, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I don't know if he said it, but that's what I'm not seeing myself enough difference in this plan from the previous one to indicate that we're going to get different results. I would love to entertain how do we move forward? Where do we go from there? Conversation. Deb threw it out. Is there a way to move forward? Is there a way to to do this that supports the work being done and also moves our kids to getting what they need. That's because we're not supposed to say what we are before we are, but I'm a no vote on 8.7 million with no changes to this plan. I'm a no vote because it's not going to make a bit of difference. It hasn't made a difference for the last 3 years on student achievement, and it's not going to make because it's not significantly different from what we received in the past. That said, how do we move forward from here? Liz?
I have a couple things. One, I think you're making great points, and I also want to remember that we are post-pandemic. A lot of these kids are, I just feel like these aren't normal times to just take out those numbers and say it's not succeeding, because digging yourself out of a hole results are different than starting on solid ground results. That said, I feel like there's some ways we could get creative, whether it's approving a one-year plan with some additional guardrails for reporting, or so adding some teeth, as we've said on other things that we've kind of revisited. And I'm not sure what our options are right now. If this is something we could pull into the executive committee or set up a separate opportunity to have learning community folks come and have a conversation with board. I don't know what suggestion to offer, but I would rather we search for a creative solution to move forward and address concerns at the same time.
Deb?
Well, I just wonder if we should have a vote to know where we stand.
Is there any further discussion? Maggie has her hand up.
Question off of what you said. The learning community, from how I understand it, is designed by legislation. So with districts or schools within it becoming high priority schools, they're not exempt from that label right now as being part of the learning community, right? Okay. So how, in your mind, like, how would that look if they're not high priority schools now? Why would they be without the learning community funding?
Omaha has been, if you go back on our Nebraska education profile, as far back as it goes, Omaha Public Schools their school rating is the lowest, and it says needs support to improve. So my contention is that this is not giving them the support based on the lack of change in metrics. This funding is not giving them the support. This is not giving them the targeted support they need to improve. And the other districts don't have, and I understand why. I do understand the Omaha Metro enough to understand why the other districts don't have that significant difficulty. So that's my concern, is that we're not going to, this isn't going to change anything achievement-wise, because the plan hasn't changed significantly from the previous plan.
Just a question. I mean, have you researched what would happen if these supports weren't in place? I mean,
I mean, that would be speculative. Because we don't know. We can make speculation, but I don't know that you can research what would happen.
Well, with 13 school districts with high poverty populations are very bought into the plan and support the plan because they feel like they need this. As I said earlier, if the students aren't getting the supports they need through the learning community, then those children are very likely to have behaviors in the classroom that are going to affect all students. And to overnight derail and dismantle something because of one person's research without having a whole listening to, like, to me, this would be something we should have a town hall about, or a committee public hearing, or sit down with a bunch of superintendents involved. I mean, it's hard for me to think about dismantling things based on one or two people's own research without an engagement in some conversation.
Just a clarification question. Am I correct in that this has been in place for 10 years, since 2015?
I think 16 is when the
2016,
statute.
so about 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further comments, Meg?
One last comment. With the funding that they have had and like not seeing a huge change, like where they are, that tells me is successful for them. And taking away that funding is gonna cause damage. That concerns me greatly, that they would be losing these supports.
I think what concerns me the most is classrooms where only 1 in 5 kids can read at grade level. I hear about the school to prison pipeline, the fact that many prisoners can't read above a 3rd grade reading level, and that's what concerns me. And this is not, I'm not objecting to this plan out of spite or personal, I forget what you what you called it, but like these aren't my personal convictions. This is the purpose of education, is to educate kids, and I'm not seeing anything moving as we hope. So we can keep belaboring it, but I'm actually breaking the Robert's Rules of Order by talking more than twice myself. Somebody needs to call a point of order on the president. Anyone who hasn't spoken twice would like to speak again. This is why I didn't order lunch, so we keep our focus. All right, since
President Tegmeyer,
yes.
I just have a question. What is the deadline for this?
March 1st.
Okay, so if by March 1st we don't approve the plan, what happens?
Commissioner Maher?
What actually happens, and then what happens next?
I'll talk through three scenarios. One if approved, 2 if not approved, 3 what's the scenario that we go by if it's approved after March 1st. If approved, the learning community funding would be included in the TIOSA certification that is statutorily required to be completed by March 1st. I know firsthand that Bryce Wilson and his staff are about ready to bring that forward, putting in the final details. If not approved, these funds will not be included in the TIOSA certification for 26-27, which means the 11 learning community districts will not receive CAP funding for the next school year. If the CAP is approved after March 1st, then we would include the CAP in the recalculation of TIOSA, which is done next fall and results in the funding being paid to the schools in the 27-28 school year as part of their prior year correction. So you have those 3 scenarios to consider. And I've said a couple times, well, you have a March 1 deadline. You have to vote on this. I guess you don't. But in the absence of approval before March 1st, these funding streams will not be included in this calculation of TIOSA for the 11 learning community school districts.
Kristen?
Yeah, can I, because exec meets, is it weekly, every 2 weeks?
Every week.
Far more frequently than we meet as a full board. Is this something that could go to your next exec committee meeting to discuss possible compromise so that we can talk about it more before March 1st, or is that not an option?
I'm actually looking at our staff to see. It is an option.
I I wonder if we couldn't ask for a vote before we decide the next steps so that we know where we're at before we start compromising.
Okay. Okay, so then, Kristen, would you be suggesting that the board meet again in full before March 1st?
Well, that was my next question, how we would go about voting on that then, if you did meet in exec to discuss, but we're not meeting again we're not scheduled to meet again until after March 1st. Could we convene virtually before March 1st to vote on this?
Ryan says yes.
Okay.
So I prepared, this was a discussion that I shared with some of you, Kristen and Maggie and Liz, but I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules. First, before I make the motion, I just want to say that the Planning and Evaluation Committee has had this plan since last October. And there's been not one suggestion for what we can do to come to a compromise or approve. There's only been, I don't like this, I don't like this. This word's on a website, I don't like it, even though it has nothing to do with the plan. We haven't ever seen a compromise be offered in any of the discussions. So what I would like to do, since the Planning and Evaluation Committee wasn't able to come to any compromise, I'd like to move to suspend the rules and to refer the Community Achievement Plan item to the Executive Committee so that they can take it to the next step and either bring something to the full board before a March 1st date, if that's possible, or to the March board meeting. So I need a second for that.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to suspend the rules and move the Community Achievement Plan from Planning and Evaluation to the Executive Committee. It's not debatable. Would the recording secretary please call the roll? We'll give her a minute.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Douglas,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes.
Penner,
No.
Schoenhoff,
No.
6 yes, 2 no.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to suspend the rules and move the Community Achievement Plan from Planning and Evaluation to the Executive Committee is adopted. Okay, Chair Maggie Douglas will report on behalf of the Rules and Regulations Committee meeting.
Okay, the Rules and Regulations Committee reports on February 5th, 2026 meeting of the committee. Members present were Chair Maggie Douglas, Vice Chair Liz Renner, Elizabeth Tegmeyer, and Kirk Penner. Committee members reviewed the report on rules. NDE staff presented the committee with policy considerations and a proposed timeline for Rule 19 school enrollment. This concludes the Rules and Regulations Committee report. Maggie Douglas, Chair.
Are there any questions on the Rules and Regulations Committee report? The next items on the agenda are items 9.1 to 9.2. These are information items and written reports for the board. Agenda item 10, good of the order. This section of the agenda is intended for board members to offer informational observations of the work of the state board. Board members may make brief announcements about attendance at future events for the purpose of informing other board members. No business or motions or suggested actions of the board may be offered at this point in the agenda, nor should board members engage in substantive discussion about other agenda items or introduce new agenda items. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order? Thank you to those who attended in person and who tuned into the broadcast. The next meetings of the State Board of Education are scheduled for March 5th and 6th, 2026 in Lincoln, Nebraska. The February 6th, 2026 State Board meeting is adjourned.